morning. I'm Cecily Betts, and I'm one of the staff members, the PI of our grant, which enabled us to provide today our transition summit. And so we're really pleased that you could attend. And as you probably know, we have 2 days worth of presentations. Today is our professional day and tomorrow is the family day. And we're just so pleased that all of you could attend. We're looking forward to having a really robust discussions about issues of concern to youth and young adults who are transitioning from adolescence into adulthood, from pediatric healthcare into adult healthcare. So what I'd like to do is just sort of provide you with an overview of what we're going to be discussing today. So if we could have the next slide. So as you will see, our first panel will be Transition Begins Early. And we're going to be sort of focusing on those issues that are really relevant to long-term planning to ensure that youth and young adults are prepared for that transition into adulthood. And it does begin early. And our panel, which consists of myself and Yvette Baptiste, will really be focused on that. Then we'll have a short break. And then we're going to have a panel speaking to issues related to independent living. And we have two really very engaged and fascinating presenters, one of whom is Keith Miller, the program director of CalLife, which is an independent living center. And Keith has been a member of our partnership advisory team, a group of professionals who have been helping us over this period of time to help plan for this transition summit. And then we have a self-advocate from Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center, Patrick Chattilli. That panel will be followed by a panel on educational transition resources. And we have transition specialists from both Los Angeles County Office of Education and LAUSD, who will be speaking about transition services and those that are available to students in the educational system, which is like really important. And they will highlight the range of services available that are informative to all of us so that we can provide better services to youth in terms of referring them, providing them with advisement in accessing these services. And then the remaining portion of the day, if you could go to the next slide, thanks. We have a lunch break, giving you a break because we all know that there is sort of this fatigue that's associated with virtual meetings. And following our lunch break, we will have an employment panel. We have three really very excellent speakers who have expertise in a variety of areas related to employment. Maria Irate, who is a senior attorney with Disabilities Rights California. Robert Lowen, who's the regional director for the Inland Empire District of Department of Rehab. And then George De La Loza, who is an employment specialist at the Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center. And then we're going to wrap up today with a presentation again by Maria Irate, who's the senior attorney at Disabilities Rights California, who will be talking about alternatives to conservatorship. So it's a very comprehensive approach to transition that articulates with so many different domains of life. So we will also, with each panel today, have a period of about 10 minutes or so that it will enable you to ask questions of the panel members. So we would ask that you insert your questions into the chat, and the panel moderators will be asking then the panel participants your questions. So we want this to be a very engaged, inclusive summit that really enables all of us to learn from one another. So let's get started with our first panel. All right, so I will share the screen here. And we'll start with, okay, what we'll do is display our settings. Okay, so I am going to talk about the issue of healthcare transition, and then my co-presenter, I would like to provide some introductory comments for sure. Yvette Baptiste is a mother of children with special health care needs, and she is the executive director of the Eastern Los Angeles Family Resource Center. She received her BA from University of Chicago and her PhD from Alien University, which is affiliated with the California School of Professional Psychology. And her thesis was focused on cultural and community psychology with an emphasis on disability. Now, what will be unique about Dr. Baptiste's presentation is that she's going to speak about transition begins early from a very personal perspective, being a parent of a young person, young adult with developmental disability, and that lived experience, which is so important for all of us to deeply understand and appreciate. But also I want to say some other things about Dr. Baptiste as well. She has worked in the DD field for over 30 years, so she has immense experience in the field, and she's developed a number of programs and training curriculum in many areas of developmental services, including for direct support staff and families who are interested in policy change. What I think too is really unique about Dr. Baptiste's perspectives that she will be offering on this panel as well is that she's an immigrant from Panama. And so she has a particular unique expertise and lived experience that she shares with those that she works with. So we're really thrilled to have her participate on our panel, obviously. So I'd like to begin with talking about, and could I ask that those on our call mute?
Oh, yeah. Next week. Yeah.
We have some folks who we're having background noise here. Thank you. All right, transition begins early. And so what I thought would be really helpful for those of you attending is to sort of talk about this healthcare piece with transition, which doesn't always get a lot of attention or is not well understood. Let me start off by saying that it's really a relatively new field of practice. And it's not only relevant, but it's really essential to providing the kinds of comprehensive services that adolescents.
I know, because I went back and I looked at, because I always send the email, like, you know, here's the schedule, and you didn't say anything. And I didn't even
Unmute themselves, please.
Yeah. Because every now and then there's like a complaint part.
Oh,
Like, what? What do you mean? Yeah, no, you're the same thing.
can we
I think
have,
the host can
It keeps that.
mute everyone in one folder.
So Dr. Betts, you just need to unmute yourself. Thank you.
thank you. All right. Sorry about that. So let's go back to a couple of slides here. Okay, so it's a new field, and it actually started long after the movements in other systems of care. In 1989, which was about 35 years ago, Surgeon General C. Everett Koop convened a conference entitled Growing Up and Getting Medical Care Used for Special Healthcare Needs, where he introduced from a national perspective this whole idea that we need to think about healthcare transitions. And I might add too that this conference was held out at UCLA. So he brought up a number of topics, and there were a number of guest speakers who talked about, you know, this emerging notion of healthcare transition that we need to be thinking about. How do we help young people access care in the adult system of care? And so what is so fascinating, I put some dates here, all of this occurred in terms of this emerging awareness, this merging development of services 20 years after federal legislation was passed to address special education needs of students with disabilities in the system of education. So those of us in healthcare were really late to the table. And that is why, you know, our models of care are still in development. We are an emerging field, but we're a field that is growing more rapidly over the last couple of years. So these were really important points. And I just want to cite here, in 2018 was the last clinical report that was developed by a number of major medical organizations, professional organizations, which include the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Family Practice, and the American Congress of Practitioners. I may have gotten that wrong. The three were both pediatric and adult professional organizations. There have been many other professional organizations in healthcare as well that have developed position statements related to healthcare transition. However, we are lacking the evidence as to what models affect the kind of outcomes we're looking at. So also I wanted to bring up that in about 15 years ago, the Surgeon General issued a call to action to improve health and wellness for individuals with disabilities, because this has been an overlooked area of practice. And so what he advocated then, and it really is true today, that it is healthcare providers need to have the knowledge and tools to screen, diagnose, and treat the entire person with dignity, and that healthcare services and supports need to promote independence for persons with disabilities. So in the field, healthcare field, many times the concepts that are so evident in the developmental disability service system and in the educational system have not fully permeated the systems of care, healthcare for individuals with disabilities. So this whole area is really exploding. Why? Because there's such a need. In 1993, there were 500,000 young people with special health care needs and disabilities who entered into adulthood. Now that number is 1 million in terms of every year, 1 million young people who have childhood acquired conditions, childhood acquired developmental disabilities, obviously, enter into adulthood. And the system of care on the adult side is not prepared as it should be to receive all these young people. And also on the pediatric side, we have not yet pervasively have the kinds of systems, transition services that are needed to engage and support these individuals as they enter into the adult system of healthcare. And so just some stats here. 1 out of 6 youth in the United States have a developmental disability. Of that number, 1.4 youth ages 13 to 17 have an intellectual disability in terms of when we're looking at the national numbers. And about 35% of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities have a co-occurring mental health condition. So this, as you know, this population who has a lot of needs, and this is a population for which the healthcare system of care is not as adequately prepared as we should be to provide the kind of ongoing services that they need. And there's about every 2 years, there's a national survey. It's the National Survey of Children's Health. And they collect data to look at, just what is the health status of children nationally. But there's also a subset of questions that look at what kinds of services do adolescents with special health care needs and developmental conditions receive. And one of the questions that's asked is about transition. As you can see, the numbers, the percentages are very low in terms of the healthcare transition services this population receives. 12.6% of parents responding said that their son or daughter received transition services, and it was even lower for those with autism spectrum disorder. So when we say healthcare transition, just what is it? First of all, it enables the uninterrupted and continuous provision of health services from pediatric to adult services. It also involves helping that young person learn the kind of self-management skills and knowledge that they need to take care of themselves to the extent possible, or their circle of support to assist them in that regard. Learning the self-advocacy skills that they need to acquire the healthcare services, obtaining the health-related accommodations that they need in school, work, and in the community, and obtaining the referrals that they need for educational services, for work programs, employment programs, and for community living supports. So it's very comprehensive. And so when we talk about healthcare transitions, there's the concept of transition and there's the concept of transfer of care. And they're different, but they're integrated. Transition is a long-term process. It's comprehensive. It focuses on life skill for adulthood. It focuses on educating the young person and their family about self-management and assist with future planning. Transfer of care is a much more delimited period of time. It has a short-term focus. It's focused on locating adult healthcare providers. It's focused on ensuring that person is enrolled in a health insurance plan and that this individual has the durable medical equipment and supplies they need as they transfer into adult system of care. And, you know, the idea of transition, it's a prolonged process. It has a beginning in terms of where does that beginning begin? And it will vary depending on the services and supports. And Dr. Baptiste will speak to that in terms of her own lived experience. And then that middle phase where these services and supports assist with the preparation for that ultimate goal of transferring care into the adult system of care and into adulthood. And that as providers that we assist in supporting that young person to achieve and acquire those goals. So at this point in time, we can talk about best practices, but we really can't talk about the evidence that supports these best practices at this point in time. Because as I started off by saying, this is an emerging field and the research is in its beginning stages, so to speak, although there's been a proliferation of now research and scholarly works that are being published. I will tell you that in 2004, we published the first review of literature. And at that time, over a period of 20 years, there were only 47 articles published on the topic. Now, thousands and thousands. So it just shows you the tremendous growth. So when we're talking about best practices, we're talking about services that are developmentally appropriate and focused on assets, that adolescents are full partners in the process, that families are supported in that process, because that can be difficult for parents who have been focused on supporting and educating their children, and now they're being asked to sort of let go and focus on different parenting skills. And then this whole process of transferring in terms of the medical summary that is needed, the primary, focusing on what kind of primary preventive and specialty care is needed. Other aspects of best practices is the client education that is needed to assist this young person and family, young adult, to learn the self-management skills needed, and service coordination to help coordinate all these various pieces. And then, of course, the referrals to employment, education, rehab, community living, and disability community services, including the identification of health-related accommodations. And what sort of helps, what are the factors that at this point in time, we sort of are beginning to learn what facilitates successful transition? That there's a future orientation that the family, young person are thinking about the future, that future planning occurs, that we're talking that way, that transition is initiated early. When the field first began, we were talking about ages 18 to 21. It's now been ratcheted down, starting in the middle school years. So understanding that it is a process, that service reimbursement is not interrupted, that is essential in terms of successful transition. And also the research has shown that the pediatric healthcare provider continues to be involved in some of those transfers. And also when the service is in the same system of care. Kaiser is an example of an organization where pediatric and adult providers exist, and it makes the transfer easier. So really in healthcare, it's really important that we begin early in terms of what the eligibility for healthcare is, and to explore what the health insurance options are, to have a conversation early on with, if there's a healthcare transition specialist, the member of the specialty team, and the primary care provider. It will vary. And here's an example of coordinating care, like in the school setting, with the school nurses. And certainly our colleagues later will be talking about those kinds of services that are available that help our young people to function better academically, socially, in educational system, identifying like what kind of procedures do they need? Do they need to go to the school nurse's office for clean intermittent catheterization, what we call CIC? Mobility, mobility is an issue in a school setting. Is mobility safety evident? So talking about those important elements in other systems of care. So healthcare involves healthcare transition, obtaining those environmental modifications that are needed, accessing the community resources, staying healthy, knowing what rights and protections are, and learning to navigate new systems of care, unlike the pediatric. And also there's health promotion guidelines for adults. These apply to specialized populations as well. So here's another example of a resource in an educational center, disabled student services. So it's a complicated and convoluted process, but if done appropriately, it can really help to facilitate that successful transition to adulthood. We'll reconvene sharply at 10 o'clock. All right. Well, we're ready to get started with our next panel, which is our independent living panel. And we have two speakers. Our first speaker is going to be Patrick Chantilly, who's the consumer advocate from the Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center. And Patrick is going to be speaking about his role, but also what it is that at Eastern LA Regional Center they do to help support consumers. As well, our other panel presenter is Keith Miller, who's the program director from the Communities Actively Living Independently and Free, which is an center for independent living in the Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles area. And let me just tell you a little bit about Keith. Keith has been working with people with disabilities for over 30 years. His years of experience have allowed him to get involved in steering committees through the Department of Mental Health. And I can tell you, Keith serves on our partnership advisory team, and he's always advocating for those issues pertaining to mental health. And he had the opportunity to chair the West Side Mental Health Network meetings. He's been working closely with the Department of Rehabilitation, the National Network of ADA, the Los Angeles Housing Authority's Department of Aging, City of Los Angeles Department of Disabilities. So Keith is involved in a lot of policy-related efforts, and he will bring that expertise and perspective in today's panel presentation. So we're really just thrilled to have Keith as well. So we will start off with Patrick, and I know Patrick is going to be managing his slides. So there you go, Patrick.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick Shatley, and I'm the Consumer Advocate at Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center. As I begin my presentation today, I'm going to start with a disclaimer, and you're going to wonder, well, Pat, why would you do that? Specific to the Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center, it's common practice, culturally speaking, as came up in previous presentations, that a lot of our families and the parents like to keep their kids at home with them for protective reasons, because they don't see their children coming into young adults, and there seems to be a very big issue with the level of control. How much do you step back? How much do you keep going? My job is not, I'm not here today to tell you that Johnny and Jimmy and Jane should move out, but rather just give you the information. So if this comes up, you can have a constructive conversation with them, their support team, service coordinator, so that everyone's on the same page and it's a little bit less crispy or spicy, as we like to say around here. This presentation that I'm going to give assumes that the individuals are served by regional centers, specifically the Eastern Los Angeles one where I work. So we will discuss the process of obtaining supported living services, the options available when they want to live independently, how the services are different, and why living independently is important pursuant to the Lanterman Act. SLS and ILS start when the person being served turns 18 or is finished with school. Usually they use the finished with school. However, sometimes you turn 18, you're not quite finished with school. That's why there's a little disclaimer there. Now I get a lot of questions because I get phone calls every day. How do we pay rent when we live independently? Well, the answer is fairly simple and straightforward. Rent is paid with personal funds, be it a job, family support, Social Security can be here, as well as shared costs with a roommate and other state functions that come in to help out on the matter. In general, because there is a lag time in assessment in terms of what skills does the individual have, the young adult, and what skills will they need ongoing support with. Because there is a lag time in this matter, the assessment can begin at 17 years and 9 months of age, which means there's generally a 3-month lag time from the time it's requested to the time of the assessment to the time they become eligible. They become eligible at age 18, as I referenced above. It generally starts in a person-centered approach, meaning here at ELARC, we like to have the individual say to their service coordinator and their support team, I would like to live independently. At the IPP when it comes up, or a specialized meeting if it's in between the IPP time. So you come in and the individual would say, Miss Betts, I want to live on my own. That starts and triggers the process. So the support team, the service coordinator, the individual, they sit down, they talk about it. They say, okay, we will select a provider who will conduct the assessment to tell us what skills you have and where you will need your ongoing support. Services begin shortly after the assessment is completed. Now, I mentioned the lag time because it's generally 3 to 6 months, at least here, give or take a little bit, because there's time between assessment and then talking about it with the service coordinators and everyone. So there's a lag time to be cognizant of. And the amount of hours is solely dependent upon the goals or proven needs for the individual and based on the assessment. So the assessment is key to how you go about determining hours, goals, and all that good stuff that happens to come with living independently. Now, there are a couple different kinds of services. We have independent living skills, or as I like to call it, minor league baseball, where you learn all the skills you need to live independently. This skill development can be provided prior to somebody moving out, so they can learn the skills why they are at home with their family, and they have support staff come in and teach these things, and the parents can also help teach these things. But it also points out what skills are possible versus what skills will need ongoing support. So examples of ongoing support, similar to me, mobility services, shopping, budgeting, community safety, so being safe in the community when you're out and about, as well as living safely in your residence when you get there. So making sure you turn the fires off when you're done cooking, making sure that you don't, put something where it shouldn't be electronically and electrocute yourself when you climb into the bathtub, that sort of stuff. Also, ILS will cover things the family can no longer do because, let's face it, and I might have some parents in here, but parents get older. It's a fact of life. So it's the things the parents can no longer do. So helping keep health and wellness appointments is a big thing, making sure that they stay healthy, they exercise, go to the gym, whatever else is in their IPP. That's the kind of important things we cover here in the ILS section. Now, as it pertains to supported living, and supported living, generally speaking, is like, well, graduation. Generally, you move from ILS to SLS. So the individual wants to live on their own. SLS provides support to the person by assisting specifically with the tasks that require the ongoing support. Again, examples include but are not limited to cooking, cleaning, community mobility, setting or keeping appointments, making sure you have social abilities and whatnot. So you are a constructive member to your community and you live independently and get the fulfilled life that was talked about in the presentation prior to mine. Again, we must keep in mind that the hours are based on the needs of the person who is being served. So you can't ask for 100 hours if they only need 50, because it's truly shown that the needs are 50, so therefore that's what they need. Now, as things expand, as they get older, as things change, these are always reevaluated, usually on a yearly basis, sometimes more if need be. In terms of providers, at least to the Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center, the provider for ILS and SLS can be the same, provided that the vendor in question has contracts with our regional center, but not at the same time. So it cannot be ILS and SLS simultaneously. I know that's a big word, but that's pretty much at the same time. It's one or the other, not both. Now, I have asked some service coordinators around here, and they tell me if your child transitions to SLS, or in this case, this professional day, your client, and they are struggling, they can go back to ILS. It's a minor change in the IPP. It doesn't take a lot to do. So if somebody is struggling in SLS, they can move backwards. When they get their goals and skills back up, they can move back to SLS. It's just a matter of making sure they are capable of making the transition. In-home supported services is something I have a lot of experience with because this is a service that I myself receive. This occurs when the individual or young adult who is receiving services wants to remain living in the home with their family, however, independently. My story, I rented a room from my parents from the time I was 18 to 25. And I had IHSS support come in, help me cook, help me clean, maintain my bathroom, make sure I could shower without falling so I was safe, and all those things that would happen when it comes to living on your own. IHSS can also be for a person who wishes to live in their own house. Now, I presently live with my grandma, but she can't care for some of the needs that I need. So IHSS comes in, I rent room from my grandma, but I'm living independently. I make all my own choices. They just help me make sure that everything I need, I have. Usually speaking, the providers in the IHSS case are family members, friends, or relatives. They become the service worker or provider. If a family is unable to support the individual, then there is an IHSS provider pool that you go to, and your service coordinator has this information and they can provide it for you. And you interview the people in the provider pool that would fit what you need. And they have a list of them. So you're not trying to go through 3,000 people. You would say, I need service X, service Y, service Z, and they would have that information there for you. Now, sometimes, before I get too far ahead of myself, IHSS, and this is very important to make sure that I differentiate, is provided by the Department of Public Social Services, not regional center. So it's a generic service provided by a different department, but regional center can get involved when issues arrive with IHSS. So if you have problems getting quality service or people are not giving you what you need to live independently, you contact the service coordinator and they help you advocate for yourself so that you can make sure you're getting everything you're entitled to so that you can live independently by yourself. It's also important to note, at least for ELARC, I'm not sure about the other regional centers because we're all a little bit different, but IHSS is a generic resource. So when regional center funds your ILS and your SLS, the amount of hours of IHSS are taken into consideration. So if you had to have 100 hours of support and you had 50 hours of IHSS, then presumably speaking, you would have 50 hours of either ILS or SLS. Again, this is dependent upon your need and can change over time as the person living on their own needs it. Oh, I almost forgot. Thank goodness for my notes here. In terms of, for IHSS, again, this is a general overview. It's expected that you would have either Medi-Cal or Social Security in order to qualify for the IHSS service. So you want to usually if you have a disability, you qualify for one or both. But if for some reason you are not, you will want to check with your service coordinator to get that ball rolling so that you can have the option of IHSS as well as SLS and ILS, because you want to use two of the three together to make sure you have a combined service that works for you. In some cases, it may be all SLS, or it may be, in my case, all IHSS. It just depends on the person who has the need. Now, most importantly, and the whole reason we have this panel and this discussion and this conference, the Lanterman Act, which is for California, all the rights that individuals with developmental disabilities have. Specific to this panel, it is the right to live as independently and unrestricted as would be possible. It is my experience through advocating for others and myself that ILS, SLS, and IHSS play important roles in helping the individuals served by regional center to live independent, fulfilling lives as active participants in their community so that they can live the way they want using our voice to advocate for ourselves. Now, my role as consumer advocate, I wear a bunch of different hats. And let's be honest, I probably wear more hats than they pay me for, but that's okay. I don't mind at all. So my first role is to give talks like this to the professionals and providers so you understand that when you hear a client talk about, I want to live on my own independently. Well, that's a conversation to have with the parents and the support system, and you might get some pushback. So you have to be ready for it. And you're trying to help make sure that the individual gets what they need and make sure that they are in a person-centered way driving what they want. So I make sure that the individuals served by ELARC, and we have, I don't know, about 14,000 individual clients, I help them advocate for themselves, their wants, their needs, their desires in a person-centered way where they drive the bus. I'm just here to say, what do you want to do? How can I help you get there? Do you need me to talk for you? Because maybe you're not as well versed as others. I can say your words for you, should you need them. I can attend your IPP if there's something you want to say, but you're afraid to make people mad. I'll play the bad guy, no problem. So I assist our individuals with consultation that empower them, as I said, to speak for themselves in a person-centered way, where it's not me telling them you must say this, but telling them how to say it so that they can get across their point of mom, dad, service coordinator. I want to live on my own. I don't know what it looks like, but this is what I want to do. And then that's how our process begins. It is also my job as the consumer advocate here at ELARC to empower the individuals that we serve to maximize their supports and their services in a way that fits their needs. And this is the most important to me, because sometimes you're allowed to make mistakes in your IEPP. You can think that something might work for you, and then as you're going through the year, you're like, well, Pat, you call me and you go, Pat, this doesn't work for me. Why doesn't it work? Well, let me review it for you. So I get your file, I look it over. Well, maybe we should try, maybe you're ready for SLS instead of ILS. Or maybe you should look at IHSS if it fits what you're looking for. Or maybe you just want to get a little bit more independence with your transportation. So I hook you up with Access and get you to start talking to them and get you through that process. So I want to make sure you get the most out of the services and supports that are available to you. Now, I saw that the vice chairman of my CAC committee, the Consumer Advisory Committee, is in attendance today. So if you, Marisol Guerrero, I know you're out there. So as a consumer advocate, I liaison with the advisory committee, the elected chair and vice chair. Yes, we have political elections, and the people, in a person-centered way, select whom they want to lead their committee. And I help go out and find speakers and topics that the consumers bring to me and say, we want to learn about living on our own. We want to learn about employment or voting. And so I go out, I gather the information, I gather the speakers, and I bring them in through a variety of presentations, trainings, workshops, or even forums like I'm starting in the coming days. So my job is to let our consumers know, you advocate for yourselves, you told me you wanted this, here you go. And then if there are questions, I help facilitate, between the speakers and the people asking the questions to make sure it's in a structured way so we don't have chaos, because sometimes meetings get kind of spicy. So you want to make sure you have a nice balance, and I'm just there to liaison and kind of moderate the meetings and help them make sure they get all the information that they should want. Oh, and before I forget, I have to plug our next meeting, because for the CAC, if you are a client of Regional Center or professionals who are out there, you have clients, maybe people that are involved with regional centers, and they want to know, how exactly do I get involved with the CAC? Well, they have to be 18 years old and served by the regional center. The minute they show up to the meeting, they are a member. They're a member before they show up, they just don't know it. If they have questions, I will have the moderator go ahead and put my information down in the chat, and you guys can reach out to me. Our next meeting, coincidentally enough, is July 19th on voting, and it's from 4 to 6 p.m. And voting is important because it's another way for our consumers to express their voices, to ensure that the rights that they have under the Lanham Act are protected and furthered in a person-centered way.
So
With that, I yield my time back to the moderator, Ms. Betts.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Thank you for that very informative and terrific presentation. So if we have questions at the end, we'll come back. So next is Keith Miller.
Hi there.
So Keith, you're on. Thank you.
Okay, and you'll be putting the slides up?
Yes, yes.
Okay, very good. Go to the first slide. Thank you. So hello, everybody, and good morning. And Patrick, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. It's not an easy one to follow. So a lot of what you talked about is kind of what we do at CalLife, but in a little different way. So I work for CalLife, Community Activity Living Independently and Free. And I am the program director for all the services that we provide here at our center. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of our contact information. this will be at the end of our presentation as well, but this is our information in regards to how you can reach us and how you can utilize our service. And I see, okay, got it. Okay, so you don't have to go to that one. You can just go to the next one. That'd be fine. Okay, so the elders have always taught me that history is very important. So I wanted to talk about Ed Roberts. So the history of independent living centers, or ILCs, is that independent living centers have provided people with disabilities the fundamental human right to fully participate in economic, political, and social life amongst our communities. The first independent living center was founded in 1972. And just a little history about that, because it's important to understand this. We're an advocacy organization. Ed Roberts is sort of the founding father of the movement for the disability rights back in the early 70s, late 60s. And for some of those you who are in the audience who go back that far, you know, there's a lot going back. A lot was happening during that time. We had the Vietnam War going, we had Woodstock in the 60s, you know, Martin Luther King was assassinated, you know, John F. Kennedy. There was a lot going on. And the activities, you know, of the social movements were really taking place during that time. But part of that was the disability movement as well. So Ed Roberts was a gentleman who had polio and was went to Berkeley, the University of Berkeley. And for those of you who've ever been to Berkeley, you'll know that the university has a lot of hills and a lot of steps. And this was a gentleman that was in a wheelchair. And there were barricades. He couldn't get into the classes. Even though he was accepted into the university, he literally couldn't get into the classes. So a whole movement started from there. And what came out of that was the first of 28 independent living centers that are now in the state of California. Just quickly, that independent living centers are throughout every state, and they're funded through the federal government that drops down to the state level. And we provide different core services, which I'll get into. Okay, next. So our IL philosophy is pretty simple. The philosophy of independent living revolves around a core belief that there is little a person with a disability can't do. We just have to do things differently. And we believe that strongly. Sometimes, you know, with a disability, you just have to do things differently, but it's equal access, equal opportunity, and that's a very strong belief that our centers and the independent living movement is all about. Next, please. So again, just a quote from Ed Roberts: "If people with disabilities have a future, then everyone in our society will have a future." And just to let you know that Ed Roberts, once he graduated from Berkeley, he actually became the head of the Department of Rehabilitation. And he was in that position for many, many years. And so he oversaw the state, California, for Department of Rehab for all those years. So nothing blocked him, even though there were roadblocks in his way to get into the university. He overcame those. The movement happened, and he went on to actually becoming the director for Department of Rehab. Next, please. So just a little bit about CalLife. Again, it's community activity living independently and free. CalLife, it's an independent living center, a nonprofit 501c3 organization that provides advocacy programs and services for people with disabilities, primarily residing in 50 zip codes within our Los Angeles County. CalLife has been around for a little over 20 years now. So we've been established, and we're one of 6 independent living centers in the current area. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we move on. Next, please. So a little bit about our services. Patrick hit upon a lot of them. We do it a little bit differently. Go back. Yeah, thank you. So I'm just going to start from the top. So independent living centers were really the brainchild of Ed Roberts, and it really stemmed from systems change. So we really, Ed's vision at that time was that we needed to change a system, right? You know, we're currently going through that right now with different things that are happening in our society. But his vision was that we need to change things on a federal, state, and local level. So every independent living center has what they call systems change, which requires 1 full-time staff or 2 part-time staff to make a full-time staff to look at systemic issues that affect everyone with a disability. So may that be on a federal level, on a state level, or a local level. And on a local level, it could just be a curb cut or a placard area. You know, on a state level, it might be something that, you know, impacts the state. And on a federal level, it could be something that impacts everyone in this country. So we have 2 systems change advocates that work for CalLife, and we are constantly working on transportation, all kinds of different issues. We have housing advocacy. We assist people, even though we don't own or operate housing. We believe strongly in keeping people out of institutions if possible. You know, but if someone needs to go into a facility, that's fine. We don't discourage it, but we try to provide whatever services we can so someone can live independently. So we help people find and locate housing, find accessible, affordable housing. We help people with Section 8, trying to find accessible units and provide the wraparound services, a little bit what Patrick was talking about as well. Benefit assistance would have to do if someone this says going back to work and they're on SSI or SSDI, how does that impact their benefits? You know, or if someone has never applied for a benefit, you know, how do you apply for SSI? How do you apply for SSDI? How do you apply for CalWorks or CalFresh? How do you do all that stuff? So we have a benefits assistance that will help someone to look at that in regards to what their benefits are and their packages. And, you know, and what if someone wants to get off their benefits? How does that impact them? How can they go back to work? How can they keep their Medi-Cal, Medicare as well? Personal assistance services, Patrick talked a little bit about IHSS. We help people get on IHSS. We help people get personal assistance or PA services in-house. You know, if we could keep someone in their home and provide those services like Patrick was talking about, then the person can live independently. They need a little additional help or assistance. Information and referral, someone calls here, they need help, you know, finding, you know, how to connect with Department of Social Services to get IHSS services. We help them with that referral process. Peer counseling, we do peer counseling here. It's a core service. That would be a staff who has a disability talking to someone else with a disability. Maybe they were born with a disability or they acquired a disability and they just need to talk to someone. The bylaws of CalLife and all independent living centers is that 51% of the people that work for independent living centers must have a disability. And that goes all the way from the board of directors to the executive team, all the way down to the staff to provide the direct services. At CalLife, I would say we're about 85% people with disabilities. So when someone comes in here, they feel right at home because they see all these people with disabilities working and they kind of connect to it. Assistive technology, we provide help with ramps, grab bars, wheelchairs, rollators, whatever someone needs in order to live independently. Maybe their insurance, their durable goods through their insurance doesn't pay for it. So we help with that. We have grants to do that. We have loaner programs. We have if someone borrows needs a new chair and they can't bring it back, it's not a big deal. They're welcome to have it. Transition, and that's a lot of what this summit's about is looking at transition. We are mandated through the federal government that we assist with transitional services, and that's working with youth coming out of high school and maybe want to enter into higher education or go into employment. So we assist that person to connect with the Department of Rehabilitation. We help them if they're, if they're transitioning out of a group home, maybe they need some assistance with that. So we do that as well. And we also work with elder adults who maybe are in a nursing facility or some type of care facility, and they no longer really need to be there any longer, and they want to transition out, and then we help them with the ILS services. And then we help with employment services, again, someone who's looking to go back to work, how it impacts their benefits, and how to connect them with the Department of Rehabilitation. And we also have a situational assessments here that we work with Department of Rehab. If someone wants to see if they can go back to work, then we feed that information back to their counselors, and hopefully that person can find gainful, meaningful employment. Okay, next, please. So just a couple more things, because I know we're out of time. So we recently contracted with the Department of Aging and T11 and the state. And it's called Aging and Disability Resource Connection. And I know my coworker, Bridget, will be talking a little bit about that tomorrow on Family Day. She's looking forward to talking about this as well. But it's very similar to what I talked about with our ILS services. It's a little more intensive services, but we guide people with disabilities and persons over 60 to live independently. We link them to services. We focus on long-term care needs, housing benefits, support services, community living, whatever they need. We use the philosophy no wrong door to get that person where they need to go, and we stick with them until hopefully they can get to where they need to be. So we cover, on the slide it says South Central Los Angeles, but we cover just about anyone. Our philosophy, there is no wrong door, and we really don't care where you live. But if someone lives, down in, I don't know, in San Diego, it might be a little bit harder to connect them to services. So we try to connect them to another center who provides similar services, and so they could get what they need. Okay, next please. And again, here's our contact information. Hopefully it will go it will go somewhere so people can see it. But just one last thing, all our services are free here. We don't ask for any money. We're cross disability, and that's why I've been in this field for a long time. We don't have a target population. We work with anyone with any type of disability, maybe a learning disability, mental health, a spinal cord injury, a traumatic brain injury. We don't turn anybody down. If we could assist them and develop a goal and help them achieve that goal, and then that's really what CalLife is all about. And I think that's my presentation.
Thank you, Keith.
You're welcome.
Very informative, and I'm sure that there are individuals attending that deeply appreciate the information that you've provided and the comprehensive array of services available through the independent living centers. So I'm looking to see questions, and there's also questions about PowerPoint slides, which we'll get to. And I didn't see a specific question pertaining to either yours or Patrick's presentation. I'll wait to see what questions arise, but let me ask for clarification when, Keith, when you said that you have actually, was it 2 or staff person and a half who are focused on system change?
Yes.
Are those issues focused on larger sort of concerns, or can an individual come and say, I am having this problem? Do you deal with issues at an individual level or the large ones?
We do. So let me give you an example of that. So we recently took on someone who needed a blue area for accessible parking, right? So and the landlord or the apartment owner didn't want to have that stripe there. And so we took that on as an advocacy issue itself. And we worked with the ADA, our consultants, to help advocate to get that person that placard, because now this person was in a wheelchair. They have a van, and they needed a place where the ramp could come out where they live. And yes, we work on individual issues as well. Okay. So even though our systems change advocates work on a larger scale, we work on with individuals as well. That's very much, remember, independent living center is all about advocacy. That's the core of it. So yes, we do that.
Okay. All right. Great. That's very helpful to know, because there are individuals out there that have encountered these barriers, and to know that they could go to your agencies and others and get that kind of assistance, very helpful to know.
Right.
Also, in terms of, for those of us, when we encounter that with the young people we work with or families, we can refer them to you.
Yeah, and you know what I would do, and I think anyone who's on this summit, please have them contact me directly, okay, and say, hey, I heard you on the summit, this is the situation, and then I'll make sure you get to the right person who provides this service.
Okay, here's a question, Keith.
Okay.
Do you work with families, parents of dependents with disabilities to connect to services, or only the disabled individual?
No, if family involvement is there, it makes it easier, right? Because if it's an individual, sometimes they only advocate for themselves. But when you have family there and family support, yes, we absolutely encourage that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and another question here. Is it a different process for a disabled parent that is a regional center client who has become a parent to a disabled child?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Say it to me.
Yeah, let me read it again.
Yeah.
Is it a different process for a disabled parent that is a regional center client who has become a parent to a disabled child?
No, there's no difference at all. When you make that call and you connect with us, the first thing we do is try to figure out exactly what you need and what the needs are, and then we go from there. There's really no difference in that process at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here's another question. Do you work with non-regional center clients but have medical and
Yes.
cognitive needs as they age?
So we work with regional and non-regional clients, right? Our focus is not necessarily regional, right? It's anyone with any type of disability, right? That's what makes us so very unique in so many different ways, is that anyone can come in here with any type of disability. So to answer that question is yes, it does not matter.
Okay. Here is a question for, I think, both Patrick and you to answer. I am uncertain how Section 8 housing intersects with regional center. So Patrick, why don't you go first and then Keith can jump in.
Okay, so if you're a regional center client and usually when you turn 18, you will talk to your service coordinator about housing options, and they will bring up Section 8 and they'll help you get on the list so that you have that available to you. Now, from my understanding, Section 8 is currently frozen. So while we still give the information to people, getting on the list is very difficult at the present time, to my knowledge.
Yep.
And Patrick, I would agree with you. For us, we actually sued the city and won a very large lawsuit for not having enough affordable, accessible units out there in Los Angeles. So there's actually we're actually put people on waiting lists that where the list moves a little bit quicker. Now for Section 8, we also have standalone contracts with certain apartment owners where they will actually give us a Section 8 unit that could be portable after 1 year. Now, some of these are in downtown Los Angeles and may not be appropriate for a lot of people, but we do have 2 people in our housing department that will try to help assist someone to find housing based on whatever their income is, where they want to live, and where they can receive the support services to live independently.
Great, great, very helpful. All right, here's another question for both of you. How do either of you facilitate teaching parents about how to teach their children advocacy skills instead of just engaging in parent advocacy? So Patrick, I'll ask you first to address that.
Okay, so here at ELARC, we've adopted not without me, about me. So for example, if a consumer was in a meeting and got up and walked out for whatever reason, the meeting stopped. So the parents can't just say, well, Tommy wants a car or whatever he's advocating for. He's walked out of the room. The minute he walks out, the meeting stops here. So for the parents, they have to understand that when their child becomes an adult and they're now seen as a young adult, they have to sort of step back. And so some of the workshops I deal with is helping the parents learn how to step back, but still be there to support their child, which leads to some rather tense conversations, but I have to have them because what's going to happen when the parent is gone and no longer here? The child's going to have to learn to advocate for themselves.
Okay. And Keith?
I love that question, actually. Prior to COVID, we used to have a lot of support groups here, and we currently don't. I would love to start a group up here, and maybe non-regional, right? It could be anyone, any family with a child who's getting older. Like Patrick says, the family's not going to always be there. How do you teach money management? How do you teach coping skills? How do you use the buses? I would love to start something like that here in our center. We have lots of room to do it. And we used to do that. We used to do money management here, crisis management. You know, how do you talk to your doctor? You know, what if you're on new medications, you know, and you're afraid to ask the questions, you know? So really, you know, independent living centers is about living independently, you know, and sometimes that's breaking away from the family, right? And really sort of honing in on those skills to live independently. And that sometimes takes some work, and it's very scary. And how do you connect them to the community supports that allows them? You know, it's interesting, you know, to put someone in a room or an apartment who has no structure, it's not going to work, right? You have to have structure there. It's like for everyone that's involved in this meeting, is that, you know, we wake up every morning, we have something to do, somewhere to go. But if someone has their own place and they have nothing to do, they may fail. So I think these groups are very important, you know. So
It would be great. It would be absolutely great to do that.
love to do it. Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah.
Good. All right. One last question here. Comment. My understanding is that children of regional center clients are automatically service eligible until at least age 3, regardless of diagnosis. Patrick, you want to answer that question?
As far as I know, because they've expanded early start, it is 0 to 3, regardless of status. However, you would have to email me and I would direct you to our intake team to better answer that question.
Okay. We have one quick little question here, and it's for Dr. Baptiste. And it's from Dr. Aldana. I'd like to go back to this idea that Yvette talked about earlier, interdependence. Do you focus on that?
Who are you directing that to?
I'm directing that to Yvette. There was actually.
Okay. I got it. Okay, got it. Sorry. But
Was it a question to me, or was it a question to them? Because I think I was kind of experiencing that as we.
She said all three.
Say that again.
She said all three.
Yeah. So I was kind of also kind of experiencing that, Patrick, that tension that comes. And Andrew wanted to move out, and I absolutely refused him to be able to do it until he just told me, I'm doing it. I'm packing my bags. I'm moving out. And I had to realize that he was going to do it, and I had to support him. And so that was my experience. But I have to say that was my experience. It's like what we said about autism, right? Every experience, everybody's transition at 18 is different. And it's based on the relationship with their parent and family. And I actually don't agree with some of the policies around kind of nothing about us without us, because I think it's absolute. And I think it doesn't allow for, a lot of times, parents experience a lot of trauma from professionals who are in their advocacy role. And it's really, it all needs to be more modulated and individual, and much more discussion and conversations. Because if your child typically gets up and leaves the room because they do that kind of thing, then some meetings become non-productive, and then you're wasting the parents' time.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I would say about that. I think we all need to have more discussion and find ways to include families as much as possible with respect.
You bring up a really good point about this area of tension that are differences that exist. So, you know, I would love for us to fully answer this question, but we have reached our time limit here. I want to thank Keith and Patrick for a really good panel and informing us about services that can help foster more independent living for the populations we serve. So thank you so very much.
You're more than welcome.
So now we're going to focus and shift to our next panel on educational transition resources. And we're very fortunate to have 3 speakers from LA County Office of Education and from LAUSD. And our first of the panel speakers will be Christine Jackson, who's a coordinator 2 for specialized services within LA County Office of Education. And she's also the lead for the regional implementation for the California Autism and Professional Training Network for the state of California. And then followed by an LAUSD speaker, Jose Hernandez, who is the transition teacher coordinator for the LAUSD Office of Transition Services. And we will then culminate in that panel with Nicole Douglas, who is a specialist in the adult transition programs in the career and transition centers for the Division of Special Education. So the floor is yours, Christine. And so thank you so very much.
Good morning. It's wonderful to see everybody here this morning. Nicole and Jose are my colleagues joining me today, as you mentioned, and Nicole will be pulling up our slides. Look at that, like magic, it happens right away there. So I work for the Los Angeles County Office of Education. I'm a coordinator in our Specialized Services Division, which means I have spent my career working to benefit children with special needs. So learning how to support them and take them through their educational journey with their family. And today I'm going to talk with you about early transition. So let's go ahead and start digging into our official welcome here. So I do want to thank everyone for being here. This is a nice chunk of your time, and your time is valuable. So please know that it is appreciated. So during our time together, I'm going to ask you to drop those questions into the chat and feel free to be comfortable. I notice many of you are comfortable with your video off. Relax, ease into it. If you'd like to have your video on, throw it on there. And if you have questions as we're going, please drop those in for us and we will circle back to make sure that we respond to those, whether it be during our panel discussion or if we can embed that within our slides, we're going to do that for you. So don't be shy. If you have a question, more often than not, somebody else also shares that same question with you. So during my brief time with you this morning, we're going to talk about what LACO is. What is the Los Angeles County Office of Education? And then we're going to look at it via the numbers. And then we're going to dig into transition, the transition specifically for our early learners. We're going to look at it before, during, and after. So LACO is the nation's largest regional education agency, and we support and protect the education and the well-being of nearly 2 million children through an equity lens throughout Los Angeles County. So let's look at some of the numbers. What's our actual reach? Within Los Angeles County, we support 80 K through 12 school districts. And we also support over 1,840 schools, 372 charters, over 73,000 teachers. little more than 1.4 million students, a little closer to 2,000 now. And included in that number are almost 170,000 students with disabilities. 70% of those students are socioeconomically disadvantaged. About 63,000 are students experiencing homelessness. We have about 260,000, just shy of that, children that are English learners. And we work actively to support our foster youth, which is just about 26,000 children. Now, at this point, these numbers are a little bit rough in the estimates because our numbers have fluctuated over the course of the last year or a year and a half. But these are our averages in our areas of support with Los Angeles County Office of Education. So that gives you a little background into what we do there. Now, additionally, we work specifically with Head Start, which is California's largest Head Start program. And we work with over 11,000 children aged birth to age 5. And we support not only children, but their families through the Head Start process. So I'm going to talk with you about how we actually actively support our students that are early learners. Now, children within the Head Start program are provided services in a number of different ways, including family child care. Maybe we provide service in the child's own home or in a child care setting, maybe a preschool program. And our Head Start programs also engage parents or other key members in building those positive relationships and rapport with a real focus on family well-being. And this includes early learner transition. Now, within our scope of practice, we encourage transition readiness for all children. Children with individualized education programs, so IEPs, and their families are going to have some pretty unique concerns that will need to be supported during transitions. So I'm going to touch in a little more detail about how we support our early learners with individualized educational programs, so IEPs, that are transitioning to kindergarten. So transition in the early learning setting is when you have a child and you're helping to prepare them to move from one setting or environment into another setting or environment. For our super early, our really young learners, this may be moving from a home setting into maybe a toddler or preschool program. However, from within that preschool program, they transition into a pre-kindergarten or kindergarten program. And transitions to a new learning setting, it impacts the entire family. So both children and family transitions between settings, these are huge for our kids, right? It's exciting. It brings a lot of joy. Families can truly look forward to all these new possibilities, new exciting things for the children, new friends, new teachers. But it can also be filled with uncertainty. It can be super frightening for everybody involved. How is the next person, the next teacher, the next school, how are they going to know my child? How's my child going to be supported? What are you going to do to help my child? And very valid concerns. That's what transition is about. All transitions involve changes for all the children and their families. But every transition, it presents huge opportunities for the families and especially for the children. So to address these upcoming challenges in the transition and to support the children and the families appropriately, we take a three-prong approach with early learners and transition. We support the child. We also do outreach to school and community to support them. That's our second prong. And the third is family support. So we've taken a real three-prong approach, not so easy for me to say, to transition in early childhood. So let's look at that. So from birth to the age of 3, a child may have what is called an individualized family service plan. And at about 3 months before the child's third birthday, a service coordinator calls one or more transition conferences. And at these transition conferences, they talk about the child's needs and the preschool options. And sometimes this conference is combined with a regularly scheduled IFSP meeting. Now, together, the team, the child and family team, addresses a variety of topics. So we're looking at things like the need for evaluation to determine eligibility moving forward, goals, we're looking at timelines, we're also looking at team member responsibilities. And when focusing on family, we're looking at the hopes, the dreams, and the concerns that they have regarding their child's transition and upcoming needs. We also look at services, we look at program availability, and we look at special education legal rights. So we're trying to encompass all of that in our early learner transitions. And then based on those discussions, we develop what's called a transition plan, and we prepare for that change in programs when the child turns 3 years old. So they have been with an IFSP. Now we're looking at possibly qualifying for the child for an IEP or an individual's, an IEP. Now, the IEP is going to focus on the educational plan to support the child. The IFSP supported not just the child, but the family in the process. Now, the IEP helps when we're preparing the early learner with that transition. We're also looking at the disability service plan, and we're looking at how we develop that disability service plan. So lots of things are involved at this point. We've got our almost 3-year-old child possibly transitioning from an IFSP to an IEP, and we're also looking at our disability service plan. And in the disability service plan, we're including a description of the procedures, we're looking at activities, and we're also looking at how we as professionals can support a smooth and successful transition to kindergarten for a child with a newly developed IEP. This is all new, not just for the child, but for the family. So how do we help to continue to transition them smoothly? So when we look at the next prong, school and community practice, we provide opportunities for our school districts and early childhood educators and staff to observe each other's programs. We want there to be a facilitation, a collaboration. We want them to engage with one another. We want them to learn about each other's curriculum. And we work directly with the children and the families to support activities to help the families who are integral to this understand their rights and responsibilities, and also how to advocate for their child with special needs. We also, sounds like a ruckus in my background here, so I apologize if you heard some loud sounds. We just got a delivery, biggest excitement for my dogs today. So we also discuss with the family, whether it be over the course of that transition year, we also look at the child's IEP information about the upcoming transition to kindergarten. So we're building all of that into that transition plan. We also look at providing education and family support activities to help the families understand their rights. And I touch on this a number of times because this is very important. We want our families to be empowered in the transition process, and we also want them to understand the rights that their child has. We also look at sharing information about the upcoming transition during those IEP meeting or meetings, depending on the needs and support of the child. And we look at what we can do and what needs and services are necessary to help the child during the upcoming year. So that's part of what we do with school and community practices. So let's move on to family outreach here. So Within our early learner programs, we reach out directly to families to discuss the establishment of the actual transition team. So we're not doing any of this in isolation. We're doing this as a team. We discuss and we support the learning about those kindergarten programs. So what's going to be a great fit for your child? How can we work together to find the best fit for you? We also talk about specific learning in different kindergarten programs. We look at special education. We also talk in depth about related services and also community services. What's out there? What's available to them? Then we hold that full transition meeting. We also visit the new school with the family. Now, keep in mind that's bearing any health or any kind of COVID restrictions, but ideally, that's what we like to do. And we also work with the family and the child to identify those activities that the child may encounter over the upcoming new school year. So when you have a child transitioning from a pre-kindergarten to a kindergarten setting, what are some activities that we want to prime the child to be ready for? What would we like to help introduce them to over the course of our transition time? And additionally, a key component that we have found to be very valuable is we introduce the family of the child that is transitioning to other families who may have already experienced the transition process. Helps you feel a little bit less alone. It helps you know that somebody else has gone through that transition process before. And it's a little bit of kind of, informal networking to provide additional community support as part of family outreach practices. So when I touch on family outreach, we want to always work with the family to discuss strategies and modifications that can support their child. We also take the time to develop an effective community system with the family and with the incoming teacher. We don't want the family to feel left out of the loop in any way. We want to make sure we continue to support them during that transition. Who do they contact if they have questions? What's the teacher's contact information? What's our school site principal or admin's contact information? And then we do some of the basic logistical stuff. Are records transferred? Is everybody in the loop? Do all the appropriate people have the necessary documents within the district or receiving school? And then we also continue to partner with the family to share information about the child with their new teacher. We want to make sure that the teacher has any information that is necessary to appropriately support the child through this transition, because it's all about the child. It's all about them. Now, family outreach practices after transition. So we don't stop just because they're in a new place, they're in a new environment. We still keep moving towards building fidelity with that family. And we provide follow-up contact with the family and the new teacher. Hey, how's it going? Let's touch base. We also help the family learn about community services that may be new or upcoming that they may be interested in. And we also, again, continue to help the family advocate for continued support as needed. That's paramount. We want to make sure that children are provided the support that they need. So in my brief run through of early learner transitions, I truly encourage you, drop those questions into the chat, but more likely than not, my colleagues from LAUSD will be able to touch on a few of those more important details. So thank you all for listening to All About Early Learner Transition in a nutshell. I'm going to move on forward and say thank you.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Jose Hernandez. I am the transition teacher coordinator for the District Office of Transition Services in regions Northeast and Northwest of the San Fernando Valley. The presentation today is titled An Overview of Transition Services. Next slide. So today's agenda, right? The purpose purpose of today's presentation is to give you guys an overview of transition services. So I'm going to be covering the following: who we are, who is DOTS. We're referred to as DOTS, District Office of Transition Services. What is transition? Some examples of transition services, and the ITP, the Individualized Transition Plan. Next slide. So who we are. So I know that in today's audience, there may be people from many geographical regions and not necessarily in the Los Angeles Unified School District. So I'm going to keep today's presentation somewhat generic. It's our hope to provide you information to gain a better understanding of transition services. Like I mentioned, my name's Jose Hernandez. I am one of 3 transition teacher coordinators that service the entire Los Angeles Unified School District. So the District Office of Transition Services, we are in charge of coordinating the planning and delivery of transition services for all of our students with disabilities, okay? Beginning at age 14 or younger if it's appropriate. And we prepare them for transition from school to adult living. In our secondary schools, we have a transition teacher on campus. This transition teacher is the person in charge of delivering the services to our students. Next slide, please. So what is transition? So the Oxford Dictionary definition defines transition as the process or a period of changing from one state or condition to another. According to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, it's a child's movement from school to post-school activities. And our focus, DOTS focus, District Office of Transition Services, is to help prepare students with disabilities for transition from school into adult living. Next slide. So let's take a closer look at the definition of transition according to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So these are the key phrases to keep in mind. Coordinated set of activities, right? Results oriented, school to post school, and based on the individual child's needs, strengths, preferences, and interests. So that is what we focus on. Our transition teachers focus on all of these different components of transition. That is why the ITP is individualized for every student. It is part of the IEP, the Individual Education Plan. Like I mentioned earlier, in LA Unified, we begin that at age 14 or younger if appropriate. That is when the ITP is added to the IEP. Next slide. So I'm going to give you some examples of transition services. So like the slide prior highlighted, transition services are activities that are result oriented, intended to facilitate movement from school to post school and based on individual needs, strengths, preferences, and interests. So this includes instruction through activities and lessons, collaboration with outside agencies such as Department of Rehabilitation, Regional Center, employment preparation, work-based learning programs. We do have grants with Department of Rehabilitation. We have the TPP grant, we have the We Can Work grant, and those give, and then we also have an internal work experience, internal meaning LA Unified provides the funding for it. That's called Grantability. So we have these programs that are available for our students to have some work-based learning experience. We also provide transition assessments, field trips, guest speakers, and more. Next slide, please. So the ITP, what is it, right? So it's important to share an important tool used to outline the transition from school to adult living. This document is within the IEP, like I mentioned earlier, right? This is, and it helps the IEP team plan for individuals' post-secondary goals, activities, and services to support those goals. We also share the course of study and progress toward graduation in this document, and agency linkages. The typically DOR or the regional center, if parent gives permission, can be invited to be part of the IEP meeting when discussing transition. Another thing is that the ITP is required by age 16, but some districts start earlier, just like us, LA Unified, we begin ITPs by the age of 14. Next slide. So who participates in the ITP? It's an IEP team. So it's the same IEP team. The student, it's very important to keep in mind that a student must be invited to their IEP meeting. The parent, the administrator designee, a special education teacher or provider, a general education teacher, any related service provider, school psychologist, and then representatives from outside agencies. Next slide. So as I mentioned in the beginning, I know that those of you in the audience are not necessarily within the boundaries of LA Unified. So I do want to share a couple of things about our services. Here is a flyer highlighting our transition services. And I've also linked our website. So if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to us. We're always happy to answer the questions, collaborate with different agencies. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Christine and Jose. Great information. So good morning. My name is Nicole Douglas, and I am the specialist that supports the adult transition programs in LAUSD. Today, I will be sharing information around adult transition and those transition skills that are key to building the independence in young adults with moderate to severe disabilities. So keeping in mind the information that Jose just shared with us through his presentation around transition services for students ages 14 and older, I will now share how LAUSD supports our young adults through our adult transition programs for students ages 18 through 22. So again, we learned a little bit about transition and transition services that students receive during their middle and high school years. But what is adult transition? Adult transition for students ages 18 through 22 is all of those things that Jose just spoke about, but then shifting to more of a focus on the development of life skills. So the skills learned through adult transition programs prepares the students for future education, training, and employment, and helps to support that successful transition from school to adult life. So now a little data. The data that you see is provided by the U.S. Department of Labor, and it clearly supports the need for adult transition programs. So looking at the labor force characteristics for persons with disabilities in 2020, persons with disabilities accounted for only 17.9% of those employed in the workforce, compared to 61.8% of people without disabilities. In 2021, the number increased slightly, with persons with disabilities accounting for 19.1% of those employed in the workforce, comparing to 63.7% of those persons without disabilities. So just based on this data and what we see, the disparity in the numbers is very evident, and it shows that persons with disabilities are less likely to become a part of the workforce compared to their non-disabled peers. So to bridge this gap and increase the percentage of persons with disabilities in the workforce, our young adults must continue to learn and build the skills needed to become as independent as possible and employable. And learning these skills becomes even more important beyond high school and their 18th birthday. So 2 key points that the data shows in terms of the overall populations of persons with disabilities is 1, that persons with disabilities are much less likely to be employed than those with no disabilities. And then 2, unemployment rates for persons with disabilities is higher than those for persons without disabilities. But specifically looking at our students within LAUSD, we have found that many of our students actually leave us at age 22 without the necessary skills to become independent or to be self-sufficient, nor do they leave us with the skills to become employable. So for students ages 18 through 22, LAUSD has shifted the instructional focus from more of an academic approach to more of a focus on the development of life skills. So LAUSD provides the opportunity for students to build those life skills through the adult transition programs offered at our career and transition centers. So what are life skills? Life skills are those skills that prepare students for life as an independent adult, an adult that is employable, an adult that is self-sufficient, an adult that is a productive member of society. So independent living skills, social skills, self-determination, employment preparation, community integration, and agency connections are all skills that promote independence and assist with a smoother transition from school to life as an adult. So these are all of those skills that make up adult transition programs that are offered at our CTCs. That's Career and Transition Centers for short. So now let's take a look at each of these specific skills just a little more in depth. So independent living skills are skills that are needed to care for oneself and become self-sufficient. So to learn these skills, students participate in activities to develop self-care and hygienic routines. Students also learn to prepare simple meals, maybe using the microwave, the top of the stove, or even the oven. And they also learn housekeeping routines, such as doing laundry, cleaning, and shopping. So a very important skill for students to learn is independent travel. So students learn to navigate the community using the public transportation, and they learn to do this independently. Social skills or communication is another important life skill. So students with disabilities oftentimes experience those challenges with appropriately expressing their wants, their needs, and their interests. So the adult transition programs provides that instructional piece in social skills and communication so that students learn how to appropriately express themselves in the home, in the classroom, in the workplace, and in the community at large. So self-determination, this is a big one, and personally, like one of my favorites. The skills learned that will empower you to make your own decisions and to take control of your own life according to your own interests, your own needs, your own abilities. And so these skills include self-advocacy or speaking up for oneself, self-awareness, knowing about oneself, their disability, their likes, dislikes, varying abilities, and how those varying abilities impact them as a person. Choice making is being able to make decisions based on one's interests, needs, and abilities. This can occur independently or with others. So if others are involved, it is important to put the student at the center of the conversation. Goal setting and goal attainment, learning to think about one's future and learning to set goals based on their own interests, as well as learning to take the steps to achieve those goals. Persistence, learning follow through. Even if the desired outcome has not been achieved or students have failed in achieving the desired goal, we need to teach our students how to be able to fall and then get back up and then keep going. So teaching them not to give up and keep striving to achieve what they set out to do is one good indicator for success. Lastly, time management. So teaching students to plan and follow schedules and how to make good use of their time is also an important skill that will be needed not only in the workplace, but in life in general. Employment preparation. Employment preparation are the skills that are needed to become employable and work ready. And those skills include career exploration, which is knowing what jobs are available and seeking out those careers that may be of interest to them. Soft skills training, knowing how to appropriately communicate and display appropriate behaviors in the workplace. Completing job applications, learning to complete applications online or as a hard copy, and being able to provide the required information on these documents. Resume writing, which is learning to provide a list of skills, work experiences, and references. So pretty much just being able to talk about yourself when applying for employment. Interviewing skills. Students participate in mock interviews to learn interviewing skills and to become more comfortable with the process. And we also work with our students on their grooming for job interviews. So we work with them on what is appropriate to wear on the interview. And then the work-based learning piece. This is participating in work experiences in the community that will allow students to develop work skills. And oftentimes those work skills can be transferred from one work site to another. Community integration is a skill that's needed to appropriately engage with people in the community and to become a productive member of society. So LAUSD Adult Transition Programs provides this skill through teaching students, one, personal and community safety. We also work with them on how to access different support services and resources in the community. We provide access to businesses and work experience opportunities. And we work with them on their independent travel. And then creating opportunities for engagement with non-disabled like age peers in their least restrictive environment, which at this age 18 through 22, is in the community. So agency connection. This is not necessarily a skill, but learning to tap into additional supports and resources is. So outside support agencies such as Regional Center and the Department of Rehabilitation will become students' primary source of support once a student exits from the public school system at age 22. And we work very closely as a district with both of the support agencies listed. So Regional Center and DOR both provide transition supports and services that assist students with the successful transition from school to adult life. So it is critical to connect with one of the agencies referenced so that your student can continue to receive the supports and services that are needed to ensure that they continue to build on those life skills. So how can professionals, because I know today is Professionals Day, how can professionals support parents and families with this transition? You can support students and families by sharing the importance of building transition skills for students with moderate to severe disabilities, and by providing information around those skills needed to assist with promoting maximal independence. So your support is needed with encouraging families to begin those discussions around transition and transition skills early, even in elementary school. Promote self-determination skills. Include the students in IEP meetings and decision-making. Encourage your families to discuss those post-secondary options after high school. And assist with connecting to the support agencies that we just shared in our previous slide. And invite those agencies to the IEP meetings. Encouraging hands-on participation and practice in independent living and independent travel in the community, as well as encouraging active participation in those work-based learning experiences in the community. So during my presentation, I briefly shared how the Division of Special Ed in LAUSD supports adult transition for our students ages 18 through 22 with moderate to severe disabilities and who have been identified as needing an alternative curriculum through the IEP process. So LAUSD adult transition programs are offered at the Career and Transition Centers, and they provide the life skills instructional focus that supports students with building the skills needed to become more independent, employable, thus helping to create that successful transition to adult life. So we currently have 8 CTCs within our district. They span from the north to the south and the east to the west. So in our Valley regions, we have Miller CTC and Leachman CPTC that serves our students in the Northwest Valley area. We have Loman CTC that serves our students in the Northeast. We have CTC West that services our students in the West region. Whitney CPTC services our students in Central. Perez CTC supports our students in the East. And both Banneker CTC and Willingburg CTC support our students in that South region. So the programs offered at our Career and Transition Centers is for all students who are ages 18 through 22 years old, have a moderate to severe disability, are identified as needing an alternative or a modified curriculum, and those who have completed their 4th year of high school. So students that are eligible for our programs are students that who have not earned a diploma. Students eligible for our programs will receive a certificate of completion at the end of their time with us in LAUSD. So the instructional focuses directly align to the transition skills that I shared throughout my presentation. So at the Career and Transition Centers, we provide that independent living skills instruction, the social or communication skills instruction, the employment preparation. We also provide vocational training through a variety of vocational programs that we offer. And we also focus on that community-based instruction. And not included on my slide, but I would like to also mention that we also provide the work-based learning piece that Jose mentioned in his presentation. And this is when we partner with the businesses within the local community, and those businesses allow our students to go into their locations to gain those hands-on job skills. So why are these transition skills so important? They are important because it increases the level of independence for students. It assists with that smoother transition from school to adulthood, helps to build that self-determination and those self-advocacy skills. It promotes self-awareness, builds appropriate communication skills, prepares students to live and engage, which is very important, to live and engage in their community. And then overall, the development of these skills helps to bridge that gap and allow students to become a productive member of society. So that was the end of my presentation. And please do, if you have questions, please drop those questions in the chat. But thank you all so much for allowing me and our team to share about transition, and me specifically to share about adult transition and the programs that are offered at the CTC. So for any additional information, please feel free to visit the LAUSD Division of Special Education Adult Transition Programs webpage at the address provided, or contact Dr. James Koontz or myself, Nicole Douglas, with any questions that you may have. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Nicole, for really informative panel presentation. And what was particularly striking about your presentation was that you embodied a lifespan approach, meaning that transition is lifespan. It's not just focused on those adolescent years, and that early preparation is so important for skill building later and development. So I'd like to thank you. We are at 11:31 and I want to be really sensitive to the time. So I think we will break for lunch as we've identified on our agenda. And as mentioned by Nicole, there's questions there that can be answered by our panel presenters. And we will reconvene at 12:15 with our employment panel, followed by our presentation on alternatives to conservatorship. So I want to thank you all, and we'll see you in about 45 minutes. So thank you. Christine, I don't think we can hear you. No, I don't think. George, can you hear Christine?
I cannot hear her.
Okay, all right. So what I will do is introduce this panel until we can get Christine hooked up here. And so we're very pleased to have the members of the employment panel join us and present on issues pertaining to employment. And those who are going to be presenting are the following. I'm sorry, it's sort of like, let's see. We have from Disability Rights California, Maria Iriarte. Maria, if I mispronounce your name, my apologies.
Okay.
We also have Robert Ruin from Department of Rehabilitation. And we have George De La Loza, who is from the Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center. And so thank you so much for your willingness to participate on this panel. So I'm not quite sure who's going to go first.
I'm going to go first.
Great, great. Thank you.
Yes. So hi, everyone. So I'm going to actually give you some resources that I think are really important for persons with disabilities who want to work or are working. The first one is, I think it's really important to know the work rules. If you're on SSI or Social Security Disability Insurance, Medi-Cal, Medicare, what's going to happen to those benefits, if anything, once you return to work? And a great resource for that is Social Security's Red Book. Not only does it have the work rules for the SSI, the Social Security, the Supplemental Security Income Program, and the SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance Program, it also has information on work incentives, resources, agencies that can assist you to return to work. There is also another website here called db101.org. It was created years ago, and I believe that Social Security funded this program. It's a website that you can go to, and there are tools that will that ask for information on your benefits, your income, and that it after you input all that information, you will get information on what's going to happen to your benefits should you return to work and earn whatever amount of money you are. The other thing about db101.org is that it has a lot of information on California public benefit programs. So if you want information on Medi-Cal, SSI, SSDI, and other things, it's a great resource to have. I'm going to skip to the third one, which is the Work Incentives Planning Assistance Program. We call them WIPAs. So these are counselors who are trained to provide in-depth counseling on what's going to happen to your public benefits should you return to work. And the great thing about these people is that if they open a case for you, and let's say that you started working and then now you're having issues maybe 5 years down the line, you can always reach out to your WIPA and they can sort of take over from there and help you, 5 years down the line. So the link there is is information on the WIPA program and also how you can access the WIPA in your county. You're going to hear from the Department of Rehab. So if you have a work goal, you definitely you should consider maybe the Department of Rehab. You're also going to hear about the Regional Center and the services and supports that the Regional Center can provide for people who want to go back to work. The next link is a link to our employment section on our website. And it includes information on reasonable accommodations, perhaps if you face a disability discrimination issue at work, how do you handle that? There's a sample letter to request a reasonable accommodation. So there's lots of information there. CalAble is a program in California where if you qualify for CalAble, and for example, if you're a person on SSI and you're able to open up a CalAble in California, you can put up to $16,000 a year into its ABLE account and not count as a resource. The money in your ABLE account will not count as a resource. The other thing about the CalAble program is if you're working and you don't participate in your employer's retirement plan, you can put an additional over $12,000 into your ABLE account. So on top of the $16,000 that you're able to put in, you can put in an additional $12,000 some odd dollars. And anyone can put money into your ABLE account and it won't count as income. And for those of you who are on SSI, you can have up to $100,000 in your ABLE account and it will not affect your Medi-Cal, your SSI and other federal programs. And it's a really important program, I think, especially for people who are on SSI. Because otherwise, for example, if you're on SSI or a Medi-Cal program where resources count, you can only have $2,000 in resources if you're an individual adult, or if you're a couple applying for SSI, you can only have $3,000 in countable resources. But CalAble allows you to save money for things that you wouldn't be able to if you didn't have the CalAble account. And then lastly, we have a publication on transition student services for students. It can start as early as 14, but the law says it has to start at 16. So what's going to happen to your child when he or she graduates from high school? So the transition plan that's created at school is focused on what's going to happen. What are their goals in life? Do they want to go back to work? If if work is a goal, then you can invite the Department of Rehabilitation to the transition planning. In the transition planning process, you can also invite the regional center if you're a regional center client. So these are the resources that we thought would be important for anyone who is considering a person with a disability who's considering going back to work, or maybe you are working. These are also good resources. So I am going to turn it over to who's next on the.
Me.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Maria. Great information and great resource that you share with us. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robert Luen. I'm the Regional Director for California Department of Rehab. Thank you for the opportunity to present it. I think we have about 12 minutes for each of the agency. Usually this is like a half of the day presentation. So I will try my best to give everything that is meaningful to the information related to the Department of Rehab. So the California Department of Rehab is working with a partnership with job seeking that have either mental health or physical disability to obtain employment. Additional to that, working with another shareholder and equally important to accomplish the same task. That we are here today to talk about early intervention for all people with disability or students with disability. The DOR provide our job seeking with service and advocacy resource in employment, independent living, and equality. At the DOR, we know that with the guidance and support with individuals with disability can be fully integrated and highly productive community member, employee, and colleague. The mission of the department is California is to achieve an employment rate for people with disability that is in parity with that in general population. One is to remove barrier to work and provide needed service and support and incentives to maximize individual economic growth and development. Who should to apply for the service for the Department of Rehab? If have any physical or mental health impairment, that is sustained impairment to individual ability to secure employment. 2, require vocational rehabilitation service to prepare, retain, and regain employment consistent with the individual uniqueness, strength, resource, priority, capability, and interest to make an informed choice. 3 is benefit from vocational rehab service in an integrated employment environment. So that's just the eligibility part of it. So I'm gonna name some of the service might be available to those individuals that is seeking the Department of Rehab. Assistive technology is one of them. Blind field service, we have specialized blind field service also too. Deaf and hard of hearing, disability access service, independent living program, mental health cooperative program, support employment CIE service, workforce development section, student service. I will highlight about the 5 core service that we offer at the 16 to 21 years: job exploration, counseling, work-based learning experience, counseling and post-secondary education, workplace readiness training, and self-advocacy. Those are the 5 major core that our counselors can provide those individuals that have 16 to 21 in school that they interested into that. Currently, for our department, we have a virtual delivery service, which is remotely our student and client can access those, doesn't matter where they at. So we have the workshop relating to those 5 core service, and addition to that, virtual job club that is available to individuals that want to access our learning platform. Right now, we do have what's called adult work experience. That is very good that we allow our client to work to see if they're interested to work in those fields. So the adult work experience that is available for all individuals that is in plan. That's a lot of those plan also too. And Maria was mentioned about work incentives benefit. Currently, the Pari have over 31 positions that are staff specialized work incentives that provide very intense information on who should when the working and when to receive the benefit, the report to Social Security. Benefit management tool, comprehensive benefit summary and analysis, and also work incentives planner to the individual parent and the client itself also too. After the DO closed the case successfully after 90 days, we do refer those individuals to the WIPA, which is a DRC is offer that continue service to those individuals. So, you know, in individuals that have received SSI benefit, they all pursue eligibility. The Department Rehab is commitment to expedite enrollment to individual that is applying for the service. So we are very one individual that is interested in getting a job. We move them along with the process eligibility quicker than before. We do have a business service available for our client also too. This is some of the area they help with. Help put consumer developing a resume, job skill, doing outreach to employer that is hiring people with disability, attending job club and receiving job fair. We collaborate closely with HACC with the business service also too. We sharing employer and business networking at the local HACC. Each of the district, we have 14 districts throughout California, and each of the district have regional business specialists. They are a key component staff to help to engage with the businesses. We offer windmill training to educate our businesses and employer about hiring people with disability. That includes recent accommodation, international support, anything that employer and businesses need to support those individual and students to obtain and maintain the job. Do I go too fast? I mean, just let me know. I mean, you know, I have my note available to all the attendees also too. And you, after this meeting, we can share that to you also. Now I'm gonna share with you some of the website. If you're interested to learn more about the Part Rehab, is www.dor.ca.gov. Again, I will type on the note because you know, after this, after my presentation, on that website we do have a hot job. It's really good resource that everybody out, and that hot job is available to everybody to apply. That is interesting to apply those jobs, and it's statewide, and it's also it's national wide also too. We do have if you have any family member or student that want to apply, you can go to DOR website and click on Getting Started. Getting Started, that means is that it's so easy. You put the information in there that will link to the zip code where they live, and that will connect to the field office based on the zip code. So that is recently new implementation that the Part Rehab mission to expedite and enroll those individuals using the technology to support open cases also too. If you want to learn more about accessibility toolkit, there is a website also too. Is www.dur.ca.gov/home AB434. All those information are gonna be on the note. So it's gonna, you don't have to write down anything. So I will provide you a note also too. That website will have all kind of information about accommodation and information for employer and for yourself or for just your client also too. Currently, we partner up with CalHHS, California Health and Human Service, come up with playbook for hiring with individual with the state job. So on the note, I emailed Tuesday about the playbook also too, and we were excited about what that is available for our consumer and student to access state agency job employment. And everyone that have disability can apply for the called LEAP, LAP, limited exam assignment program. That is, you go there, go to the website, and you're able to ask for a LEAP certification, and that will be available on the note also too. Limit exam and placement program. That's what that stands for. Everybody can access those also too through the counselor at the website. Couple more things. If you interested in apply for a state job, you can go to Cal Career account. Encourage your client to create a profile and then and apply to any job that have LEAP certification. Most LEAP certification is entry-level job or high-paid job also too. So you have to open the Cal Career account first before you apply for the LEAP. So that's the first step. In order to apply for LEAP, all you need to do is have a disability or medical record or diagnosis from the doctor that show they have your impairment, you have disability. So use all SSI, SDI that could apply for that. The last couple of things I will share with you that the last 5 years, we've been partnered up with CDE and DDS to come up with CIE Blueprint LPA resource. Currently, we have 59 LPA throughout the state partnered up with OEA, local education agency, and also workforce development, community partner. Any partner that serve people with disability can join LPA. So we have 59 throughout the state. We've been check in with each region or LPA and give them feedback. I'm really excited about how those LPA feedback and recommendation to move and more resource and support for individuals with disabilities, especially identity population on this effort. More information on that, all you have to do is just www.calhhs.ca.gov and home CIE/. They do have so much information, resource. If you have any question on that, I will reach out to me, and we can direct you to provide more additional resource to that. So that's my conclusion on that. And thank you to all the attendees, and on behalf of California, we would like to say thank you and appreciate for your support and your service to those individuals with disability. Thank you. George, back to you. I think I did my 15 minutes, is it?
Okay.
Thank you, Robert.
Oh, there you are. Well, thank you so much, Robert, for the introduction. And I do have a PowerPoint. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to be pulled up. If so, you can pull it up now. And as I'm waiting for it, and if it doesn't show, that's okay too. I can go without it. But I do want to introduce myself to everyone. My name is George Delalosa, and I'm the employment specialist at Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center. And briefly, I want to let you all know who we are. I know that you don't often work with regional centers, and we were the creation of a Lanterman Act in 1969, which is significant because that's when the state began closing down statewide hospitals, institutions, and we opened up the world for our consumers with intellectual and developmental disabilities. 21 agencies are throughout the state, and right now we're servicing about 250,000 young adults. We take care of individuals from birth to death. We have a comprehensive slew of services, too many to go on right now, but one of those services is employment. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Our goal at the regional center, and we can change the slide, in the area of employment is to work with our partners. And Robert is one of our partners, Maria is one of our partners, and so many people here today are our partners. We work together and collaboratively to do the same thing. My big goal today is to let you all know our students, our young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities can work. That's my point today. And I want to drive that home by mentioning a few things. Employment First Policy, fancy word. CIE, Competitive Integrated Employment, another acronym that says a lot. But essentially what they're saying is that our individuals belong in the workforce and every part of living society in an integrated fashion, not separated like the old days. And so moving to my next slide, I want to begin to share with you, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, I'm not sure why, there we go, thank you. At ELARC, we are specifically hitting 5 areas. Our service coordinators, along with myself, sit in IEP meetings. We go to individual transition plan meetings and discuss employment. We're talking with families as early as 1, 2, 3 years old. That's when we start talking employment. That's when we talk about employment with our typical kids. And so we are involved at that point. We work with young adults in developing pathways. That means working closely with DOR. And we move on to post-secondary education. We currently partner with East Los Angeles College, Pasadena City College. I can go on and on and on because many training programs that lead to employment are offered there. We also work more closely with other agencies in customizing employment and in supporting employment. But a big thing that we do at the regional centers is I'm part of many business advisory councils. We need to find agencies to provide job opportunities for our young adults and adults, which is why the next slide is important. Is there a slide that says setting the context that may have been skipped? I will go ahead as we look for that slide to explain to you what that slide says. When I meet with employers, I don't rely on too many bits of data other than the language that they understand. And that is Forbes magazine, the leading magazine in business, makes it very clear to everyone that our consumers, our students with intellectual and developmental disabilities are the best workers. They're wanted, they're needed. They don't miss work. They come back from lunch at the time they're supposed to. They're eager. They're great for business character, and they're great for society in general. So who wouldn't want them? Well, we are learning that productivity-wise, they are overproducing. They're at about 90% of production levels. That is critical information for our potential employers. So with that in mind, going on to the next slide, I want to be very specific what we do. We talked about competitive and integrated employment early on. You can see where it's going, but I want you to understand that it's real work, getting paid real wages in real time. What that means is that we want our consumers to work alongside with others who may or may not have a disability. That's important. We want full integration. We want them to get paid the same amount of money. For so long, many of our students were being paid below minimum wage. This was unacceptable. And so I want you to all know that today, we do not have those placements. We are moving forward Most of our consumers are making minimum wage or better. Now, our consumers do get a one-on-one job coach. If we can go on to the next slide. They get a one-on-one job coach through our program. Our program is called the Paid Internship Program, which I will end with this afternoon. But I want you to understand that our consumers, young adults, your students who are working through our programs get the same opportunity to promote. These aren't hand-me-down jobs. We're not pulling at heartstrings. Our consumers are performing in aerospace engineering. They're performing busing tables. They're performing at state senators' offices. They're performing at public radio positions. They are performing at cafes. I can go on and on and on, but we want them to have the same benefits. And so we push for that. And our goal is to get them employed full-time or part-time, whatever their choice is. If we can go on to the next slide. I'm going to focus on the paid internship program and how it works at Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center and statewide, by the way, with all the other regional centers. We offer 1,040 hours. If you break that down, that's about 20 hours a week for a full year. And guess what? You can do it 3 years in a row. That's a lot of hours to experiment, to go out and try a job and to build up a resume. That's how we look at it. We want you to get a full-time job, but we also want you to take advantage. Go out there and try something you never thought you would, that you don't have enough information. Go do it. We support that. We do not have a maximum limit on salary, but we do have a minimum. You cannot go below minimum wage. But like I said before, our consumers are earning around $15.50 an hour. You have to be in a competitive environment, as I described to you already. And the goal is permanent employment, and that may be for somebody a part-time job. If we can go on to the next slide. Our second goal is for experience only. As I mentioned to you, when I meet with families and young adults, I tell them if I was their age, in their situation, I was given 1,040 hours, boy, what I would have done with that coming out of college or coming out of high school, to try different things. And so we want our consumers to try different things. And we want them to, and they can participate in 3 PIP placements. Now, the job coach is a very important thing to discuss. The main thing is that a job coach is exactly what it sounds like. We have a person, a professional trained to support an individual working at a site. Employers love this. They get 2 for 0. Remember, they're not paying one penny. We pay it all, plus our consumers come in insured. With a job coach to help them learn the job, this is a fantastic relationship. Job coaches are professionals, and there is an expectation. So we have reports, we have everything done monthly, and we review to make sure there's a good fit. If I can change slides. This is just for fun, and I would like for you, and this presentation is for all of you to have. I follow every specific data for our consumers as required by the state, but then I just like to follow data. It tells a story, and the story, the data you're looking at in front of you right now is telling you that our consumers are succeeding. We have placed over 500 consumers paid internship jobs. That is incredible. They are working. They are gaining self-esteem. They are fully integrated. And that is the ultimate goal of what we're doing. But what you see in there is something called the micro enterprise, and I'd like to mention that. We support, our programs support individuals who want to try out their own business. I'll give you one example. We have an individual teaching guitar, classical guitar, remotely to LA Unified School District students now as a micro enterprise. He started with us, he's continuing, and we have another person who started as a stand-up comedian, motivational speaker, and now is working for Disability United. These are the things we do. We foster growth everywhere, and we hope that our consumers will continue to do this work on their own. If we can change the slide one more time. Finally, I just want to say that I'm proud to say that consumers at Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center are earning high wages. They are working, they are motivated. And just so you know, we do provide incentive payments. You see that at the bottom. We do provide incentive payments to employers and employment agencies that help us find placement sites for our consumers. And that's been a wonderful program through the state of California. Now, I wish I had more time for all of you. I think I have one more slide. And that's just to thank you and to provide you with information, how to contact me. If you have any questions about what I've presented today, I would love to share it with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, George. And you can hear me now. Can you give me a thumbs up?
Yes.
Okay, good. I switched audio to the phone. I don't know, the computer played a trick on me, but I think I wasn't able to introduce myself at the beginning, but I'm a pediatrician at Children's Hospital Los Angeles and work at our UCEDD and work with families that, I know that individuals could become employed, but they're, accessing the correct resources is always a challenge. So hearing the wonderful things that you all are able to help us understand and know what's out there is very important. So I appreciate all the links in the chat. I think there's a couple questions, and I'm glad we have a few minutes. These are really great questions. One was, does the Department of Rehab provide services to individuals who are undocumented? And how does that work?
Yeah, this is Robert. We don't request for any undocumented thing. As long as they have proof they have a disability and the right to work in California or in the state, we assist it. So we never ask about document anything at all. So we support
okay, great. Okay.
I failed to mention about that we have a great partnership student internship program with the state for this population, identity population. Each one of students that want to do internship with the state, we have 512 hours that individual can access the internship with the state agency job also too. So I apologize that I forgot to mention that. It's been very successful, get them enrolled into the state Cal career and also get them enrolled with the LEAPS application, and hopefully any opening throughout the state in different agency, we will encourage the manager to look at those individuals for those jobs also too. And that's the reason that Cal HHS is developing a playbook for hiring to increase a different agency, HR, to employ individuals with disabilities. So that program continue. I'm really excited about the outcome on those individuals. I don't have the data to show with you, but it's continue to open and dialogue with the HR manager and a direct hire manager with the state job. So look forward to see more of those successful.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And the other question that was for DOR that I saw kind of a couple times was, does the individual have to be referred by their service coordinator if they're a regional center client, or can they self-refer as long as they have a disability? Is that so? Self-referral, or you don't need a referral, correct? From the regional center.
Yeah, they self-refer or refer by the LEA, by the school district, or by the case worker. So we have each region, each district have a different approach of orientation and intake scheduling, but that's why we have that get started. If individual client that is interesting, just put information on there and go through the zip code where they all live. But each district have their own process, and that process for this population is referred by the regional center or a case and a care provider, or can be referred by the vendor also too. So it doesn't matter what process, as long they want to work and we can assist them.
Okay, great. Okay. And then I saw another question, which is an excellent one. One of our participants asking if how does their son, who has a regional center and a DOR client, get a job coach? Like what in general? How does an individual be able to access that?
Good
one-on-one?
question. If they have a case, yeah, good question. If they have a case open, that's part of the service to be job retention. We provide those job coaches. Like the rehab counselor should work with those individuals. What is the need, and for obtaining the service, that should be no problem. And as long as identified in the IPE, individual plan for employment, that's part of the service to achieve the employment.
Okay, so it's something that should be talked about with the counselor, you said, at DOR. Yes. And in the IPE. Okay.
IPE.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can address the second
and
part
then
of
George,
that.
yes.
Yeah, I can address the second part, sure. With the paid internship program, it is automatic. The regional center will pay for every hour that you're working. The regional center has committed to paying job support for every hour you're working. If you're working a 40-hour week, we pay 40 hours of job coach. Now, when we share consumers with Robert's DOR consumers, we share them at times. And when DOR finds that there's ready to transition a consumer back to us, we open our arms to that transition and will continue funding job coach supports as needed. So I just want to make this person understand that. Great question. We will support the individual at the job site so long as it's necessary. We will never walk away.
Great. And I think another question I had also when, and it's related to some of the questions in the panel, is if I have an individual, a patient or a family member who's in the regional center, how do they find somebody like, and I see some questions, does every regional center have a program like George talked about? And so my understanding was that to go through the service coordinator to ask for the specialist, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. All regional centers have an employment specialist, and we all have the same programs. We have the paid internship program is our biggest program right now, and it is, as you saw, lots of hours, lots of services. I would recommend that any family member, consumer, contact that service coordinator and request that the employment specialist be part of the meeting to get specific information on how the program works. At ELARC, I sit in every meeting. I make that important. That's an important part of my job, because what I do is I help the family, consumer, everyone, the whole circle of support, understand exactly where we're going with this. I want the consumer to lead, to tell us where they want to go with this job idea. And together we help the consumer and everyone understand our roles. So I would advise to, yes, contact your service coordinator and request that the employment specialist be part of that meeting.
Okay, great. And then along those lines, if an individual is seeking employment, where would you suggest if they are a regional center client? Do they go first through the regional center and their service coordinator, or do they go first to the DOR, or does it not matter?
I think, and I'm going to, Robert and I would definitely partake in this answer. What I do is I work closely with, of course, the DOR office closer to me. And we have a partnership. We go to the same meetings, we talk to each other, and I like to call it a pathway. Sometimes it makes more sense to start with one agency or the other, but I like to hand off the baton. In other words, if we offer 1,040 hours of paid internship work, let's use it. And if it makes sense to transition that consumer over time to DOR for additional work experiences, why not? So we like to work with our agencies. So the answer to the question is it can start at either office, but get it started. And I'll let Robert take it from there.
The way I'm looking at it is no wrong door. So doesn't matter what to go first, but regional center have their own criteria for eligibility. They serve a certain number of disability, criteria. For the part rehab, we have, eligibility criteria that if you have a disability period with impairment, So you have to look at that too, of those individual that is interesting to seek service. Look at the severity of the disability, the criteria of disability also too. Both agency serve a different level of service for that. So no wrongdoer. So I would say do both and to see, apply. But for us, if you want to work, we will welcome everybody to apply for service.
Okay, wonderful. And I think I just wanted to tie back to some of what families' concerns about SSI benefits and employment and how that all ties in. So knowing that there is this red book with resources and then the work incentive planners that can really help guide through that process, I think is important for families and professionals helping families to keep in mind. And the last question, and then we're going to turn it to our next talk, is if somebody is going to college, can they still get job coaching and other supports? And I'm gonna guess the answer is yes.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
And that would be ideal, right? Okay, thank you. I think this is really an empowering panel, and I kind of want to keep that theme as we go into our next panel, again with Maria Ariassi, who is our a senior attorney from Disability Rights California, and she's being Mary Rios, senior advocate, has been helping with some of the links, and she's helping support the talk today. That we're going to move on to alternatives to conservatorship.
Christina, I just want to answer on one question on the chat. Does the DOR help with college? Yes, of course. If it had to be in the IPE plan, that is the plan for any higher education. That we will support. However, we do encourage every client to apply for a FAFSA, financial aid first, because we all some benefit with the federal. So every client that seek or service that attend higher education, they are required to apply for FAFSA, financial aid.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Maria, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we're gonna go, I have a PowerPoint to show, so let me get it. So before the age of 18, parents or guardians get to decide everything about a child. So where they're going to live, about their education, personal needs, whatever. And there's also a family code section 6550, and I've included a link to the document. And under certain situations, a relative, and there's a definition for a relative, can make decisions at school with regard to medical care or getting the child into school. And the form is there. But when your young adult turns 18, your young adult now has the ability to make decisions for him or herself about everything, about where they're going to live, whether they're going to go to school, their finances, whatever it is. When parents are thinking about conservatorship and their child is getting close to the age of 18, they may talk to other parents to see what they did. And there seems to be a knee-jerk reaction to think about a full conservatorship. And a full conservatorship takes all rights away from the person. And in order for that to happen, you have to file a petition with the Superior Court. And at some point in the process, the judge is presented with evidence as to the person's capacity to take care of, finances and everything else. And then the judge decides whether or not a full conservatorship should be granted. And it's for anyone 18 or older. And it can last currently, because I'm going to talk about some legislation that may change things, it can last forever or until the consumer dies or other things. But it's pretty hard to get out of a conservatorship once it's been granted. So what is the goal? The goal is to keep the person as independent as possible. So how do you do that without a full conservatorship? So we're going to talk about some alternatives. The limited conservatorship is for people with developmental disabilities. I'll talk about that in a moment. Circle of support, also, I've heard it mentioned as like supported decision-making, maybe using a durable power of attorney to get what you need, an advanced healthcare directive. We're going to talk about ways in which someone can continue to participate in educational decisions once your adult child turns 18, and medical decisions. So let's talk about a limited conservatorship. It's the same process as when you file a petition in Superior Court for a full conservatorship, except you're asking for a limited conservatorship. But the judge can only take away up to 7 rights, and they're here listed. So where you're going to live, marry, whether you have the ability, to sign contracts, consent to medical treatment, social sexual contacts, education. And that's it. So someone, let's say my mom files for a limited conservatorship and she wants to take away all the rights from me. Well, the judge may decide based on the evidence that's before the judge that maybe Maria, really, we shouldn't take all of these 7 rights away from her. Maybe the only things we need to take away from her is to consent to medical treatment or make decisions about her education and not take everything else away. Now, there are things that we cannot take away in a limited conservatorship. The way the person uses their money or spends the money. You can't approve harmful medical treatments or carry out drug treatments or sterilize the person or put the person in an institution or, have them have electroshock or undergo psychotherapy. In other words, the rights that you have as a limited conservator are what are in the letters of limited conservatorship. What of those 7 rights do you have to control? So what happens once you file a petition for limited conservatorship is that an investigator is assigned to work with the consumer, the person who's going to be conserved. That person will explain to the consumer what's happening and determine whether the person is able to attend that hearing where the judge is going to make that decision, whether that person opposes conservatorship or maybe opposes the person who wants to be the conservator. And the investigator will write up a report based on all the information the investigator has gathered. When I did a training not too long ago and Mary was there, one of the persons told us that it took 6 months for the investigator to do the job because the investigator was talking to everyone under the sun, friends, neighbors, whatever. It took a long time. So, depending on the situation, this can take a while or not. So the regional center can also play a part in a limited conservatorship. I can go to the regional center as a consumer and say, hey, this is what's happening, and can you file a report with the court? And that report would include the nature and degree of my disability, what type of assistance I need, my physical, mental, and social well-being, and recommendations to the judge. That's something I can do as a consumer. The other thing I can do as a consumer, we have a sister organization called the Office of Client Rights Advocates. So for every regional center, there's an attorney and an assistant assigned. They're not employees of the regional center. They're there to advocate for regional center clients or persons who want to become regional center clients. If I'm a regional center client, I can go to my client's rights advocate and talk about what's happening. Perhaps that person will talk about alternatives to conservatorship and talk to, if I've been assigned an attorney or if I have an attorney, talk to the attorney, to the investigator, and support me. So there's a number here. If you don't know who the client's rights advocate is in your area for your regional center, you can call that number and get that information. So we've talked about limited conservatorship as an alternative to a full probate conservatorship, right? We're going to talk about another tool, and this tool, supported decision-making or circle of support, is not mutually exclusive. You can use it along with the other tools I'm going to talk about. So you might say to yourself, well, I'm already the circle of support for my child. Well, you are, but you make the decisions about what's going to happen. You decide as a parent who you might consult with about issues that your disabled son or daughter may be having. With a circle of support or supported decision-making, I, as the person with a disability, make the choice as to who I want to have in my circle of support, who I want to go to when I need advice, when about life, about my goals, when I need help with advocacy, or if I need someone to come with me to the doctor. I decide who that my circle will be. So you see how it's different than what the parent does already. And there's a really good publication authored by Disability Voices United on supported decision-making. And I am going to talk about supported decision-making later, because there's a bill out there that's going to change the way we do things with conservatorships. It hasn't passed, but it's on its way. Hopefully it'll pass. Another tool that's available is having a durable power of attorney. This is a document. Let's say that I'm the person with a disability. I will sign that document, and let's say I give my mom the power to decide my finances or my education or whatever else I want to give her. And I can give the durable power of attorney to more than one person. Now, I can also take away the power of attorney from that person. But what's really important about the durable power of attorney is that the person who's signing, I'm signing that document, I have to have capacity. I have to understand the benefits, the risk, and the effect of the document. I don't necessarily need to understand the big fancy words in the document. I just need to know what's going to happen what is the benefit, what is the effect, and the risk of this document, right? As long as I understand that, then I have capacity to sign that document. So, and the thing about a power of attorney is you don't go to court to do this. Here in California, you would have to have it witnessed or notarized, depending on the type of power of attorney. And if you go to an attorney to get a durable power of attorney, the attorney will make the decision as to whether the person has capacity. Because down the line, capacity could be challenged. So it's really important to know that. Another tool that we have, anyone can have an advanced healthcare directive. So what does this do? I have capacity to sign this advanced healthcare directive that says that should I not have the capacity in the future, I assign this person or these people to make medical decisions for me when I can no longer do that. There's an example of a very simple one there. I have one that's over 18 pages. And when I started to answer those questions, I never thought of these kinds of questions and that I'd have to decide the answers to these questions. So it's really, really, really important. So it's important, you have to have the capacity to sign the advanced healthcare directive, but down the line, if you lose capacity, then this person or people would be able to make medical decisions for you. Talking about rights to educational decisions under the California Education Code, I, as the student, can sign this document, and we have the document there in the link, assigning, allowing my mom, for example, to continue once I turn 18, to continue participating in my educational matters. I can do it through a durable power of attorney, but why would I want to do that if I can just use the form, right? Or limited conservatorship too. You can do that through a limited conservatorship. So there are different ways to do different things, right? To make medical decisions, we can do that through a limited conservatorship or a durable power of attorney or a HIPAA form. So I, as the person, let's say that I want my mom to continue, participating in medical decisions, coming to the doctor releasing, or the medical professional releasing information to my mom. I could sign a HIPAA form letting that happen. And you can, most health providers have their own HIPAA forms, and I would have to sign it, giving that right to my mom, right? The other thing we do when we have the client on the phone is we'll call the doctor's office because we want to get information. Sometimes they'll talk, and I'll say, we've got client on the phone, we have a 3-way call, and then we want information and what information we want. Sometimes what will happen is the person at the doctor's office will talk to the client and get consent to release information to us over the phone. Sometimes it happens, but sometimes they do say, no, we want a HIPAA form, we want a release, no problem. To get general information also, let's say, a typical example is I want information from the California Children's Services on a client. They have their own form. We have a general release form too that we've put together, but they won't accept our form. We have to use their form. So whether it be a regional center or, whatever agency, they may have their particular forms to release certain types of information. And we've also done that 3-way call scenario. And sometimes we get the information and sometimes they say, no, we need a consent release form to be able to give you that information. So finances, you can do that through a limited conservatorship, a durable power of attorney. If the only thing that I have are my Social Security benefits, all I need is a rep payee to take care of to handle my money, my Social Security money. I don't need a durable power of attorney. I don't need a limited conservatorship because all I have is my Social Security money. The other thing to know is that if you're a regional center client and you turn 18, there are services that are available to you, such as independent living services. And one of the things that they do is they can teach you how to manage your money. There are a lot of other things they can teach you to become independent in the community, but that's a really important one. Another way to manage finances is to create a special needs trust. You do that through an attorney. It costs money. And if there's a trust, then there's a trustee who manages the money according to the rules. And that person makes decisions as to what the money will be spent on. You can have a joint bank account. Let's say I open up a joint bank account with my mom, and she has equal authority to make checks and deposits and withdrawals. If you are on SSI or Medi-Cal, a big caveat is my mom shouldn't be putting any of her money into my account. We cannot be commingling money because, even if it's my mom's money and SSI or Medi-Cal get wind of it, they're going to send me a notice saying, hey, you're over-resourced. And then I have to explain that is not all my money, it's my mom's money, and it just complicates things. So the best thing you can do, you can open up a joint bank account, but just don't commingle the money. Keep your money separate. The other thing that you can do is if you qualify to open up an ABLE account, this ABLE account in California is called CalABLE. You can, if you're on SSI, for example, and I talked about CalABLE in the other presentation, you can put up to $16,000 of money into that account, and it won't count as a resource for purposes of SSI or Medi-Cal and other programs. And when you open up an ABLE account, let's say I open up an ABLE account and I assign my mom as the authorized legal representative, she's the one that handles my account. She's the one that withdraws money, uses the money on qualified disability expenses. She's the one that puts money in. Other people can also put money into my account. So you see how you can do it, different ways to do things. The other thing to know is that the regional center, the Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 4655, authorizes the director of the regional center to consent to some medical, surgical, and dental treatments under certain situations. So if the consumer doesn't have anyone authorized to give consent to these kinds of treatments, then the regional center director can decide whether or not to do so. Or if the person does have someone with that authority, but that person is not responding within a reasonable time, then the director can give that consent or not. And the director can also initiate the process for conservatorship. And the code for that is right here, if you want to look at it. Now, what I want to do is I want to talk about the bill that's right now, I think, in the Senate, California, and it's Assembly Bill 1663, and it's called the Probate Conservatorship Reform and Supported Decision-Making Act. It's very long. And what is the goal of this act? A couple of really important things. So it is going to include supported decision-making in the statute as an alternative to conservatorship. There's no support there. I don't know, there are a number of states that have that, but California hopefully is on its way to including supported decision-making in the statute, so it's law. And it's going to make these full conservatorships the last resort by requiring the courts the courts are going to want to make sure that you've considered all the alternatives, included supported decision-making, before you seek full conservatorship. So these alternatives to conservatorships will be important. And it's going to make it easier to end a conservatorship by requiring periodic review of the conservatorship. And that will include talking to the conservatee, the person who has been conserved, about whether they want to continue the conservatorship, terminate, make it less restrictive, whatever that may be. And so those are big changes to the law, and we'll see where that goes. You can follow AB 1663. You can go to in Google and do California bills, and then you can get to a website and you can put the bill in, and you can actually follow the bill as it progresses. So we'll see what happens with that. I also, so this is Assembly Member Brian Manshine. I hope I didn't, I hope I did service to the last name, but there's information there, and we're going to provide you with the link. The other thing I wanted to show you is if you want more information on limited conservatorships, alternatives to conservatorship, and full conservatorship, there is a website through the California courts. There's a lot of information here, like understanding conservatorships, the handbook for conservators, types of conservatorships. Probate conservatorships are what we've been talking about. Duties of the conservator, where you file your conservatorship papers, the role of the investigator that I talked about. Sometimes people can get temporary conservatorships, ending the conservatorship, the role of regional centers, limited conservatorships, alternatives to conservatorships. It's a really great website for more information. So I've come to the end of the presentation. I think this is the shortest I've ever done. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you so much. We definitely have time for questions. And I think what I've been seeing in the chat, primarily, there was a question about one of the documents, if a lawyer is needed to sign the document. It seems that most of, and this may have been like a durable power of attorney. It seems like most didn't, maybe a notary, but yeah,
yeah, you don't, I mean, look, every state has its requirements as to what constitutes a legal power of attorney within that state. So, you know, there are powers of attorney floating out there in the internet. Whether they're legally binding or not, I don't know. But definitely, if you were to go to an attorney to have a power of attorney drafted, that attorney would know what's legally required to be in the power of attorney. I was in one of these trainings where a parent had gone to an attorney to draft a power of attorney, and she actually volunteered to share that power of attorney with the rest of the group, right? So, you know, all I can say is the power of attorney to be valid, effective, legal has to have the right information in it. So, you know, my best advice is you would want to consult with an attorney, or you might have a friend or family member who has gotten one here in California, and you know, and you might want to use that as an example and draft something. But yeah, my best advice is, you know, you should seek the advice of an attorney. There are estate planning attorneys. They're also called elder law attorneys who do this kind of work. It's probably a very, you know, something they do quite often. So they probably have templates that they use for clients. So I can't imagine it would cost a lot of money to get something like that done.
Okay, thank you. And I think thank you, Mary, mistaken. It was probably about the healthcare directive.
No, you don't need an attorney. You don't need it. Yeah, no, it's an advanced healthcare directive. It's what you want to do if you don't have the capacity medically, and what happens to your body after you know, where do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? All those kinds of things and more things we don't really think about, right?
But important.
Yeah.
Keith, I see your hand up. If you go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. So power of attorney, and you may have answered this question already, but my father recently passed away. Does the power of attorney go away after someone is deceased at that point? Are you no longer the power of attorney?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry for the loss.
Thank you.
And did your dad sign the power of attorney?
Yes.
And he's deceased. It's over.
It's over at that point. And the reason why I asked that question, because there's a little bit of money involved. So when you go to the bank, when I went there, it says, well, you're the power of attorney, but he's no longer, you know, here. So they said it no longer.
Well,
you know.
Yeah, I mean, what you would need to find out, was the account owned by someone else, or was it just in his name? So when you pass away, what you have, both personal and real property, becomes your estate, right? And if there are documents, like if you went to an estate planning attorney and there are documents that inform how that estate is going to be split up, then it'll be done like that. If you didn't leave a will and you don't have anything, and in California you pass away, there are rules that decide who gets what.
Right. It's interesting. I always thought the power of attorney was the, you know, when, you know, I didn't know when someone passes away that you're no longer the power of attorney, you know. It was an interesting,
yeah.
It was interesting to me. So, and there's no issue in what we're doing with, but I was just kind of, it was an experience I had a couple weeks ago, you know, with that issue. So.
Well, I guess the real, I mean, the focus will be, well, did he have any documents that stated what would happen to his estate? Is there a will? Is there a trust of some sort? Yes. And that's how the property will be, whatever he left behind will be divided, including the bank account.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
I think kind of related to that was a really good question about what happens if there is a conservator. What happens when the conservator dies?
Well, sometimes there's more than one conservator assigned, appointed to one person. So if there's more than one, then that whoever is left or people who are left as co-conservators would continue. And if there is no other co-conservator and and the conservator dies, then the court needs to be informed of that and will appoint another conservator. And I think that the process of the court is that they're going to look to family first and then, make their way down the list, but there's a preference for family.
Yeah, and these are, sometimes tough things to talk about, but I'm really happy that we're just putting it out there. These are things I'll be thinking about.
Yeah, it's for anyone. It's for anyone. And I always say, I end up talking about estate planning here. I'm not an estate planner, and but when you die and you want to leave things to, especially your child with a disability who's receiving public benefits, you want to leave things in a way that is not going to affect the public benefits. And so therefore, talking to an estate planning attorney, elder law attorney is really important so that the inheritance doesn't, make it so that now they're off their SSI or their Medi-Cal and there are problems, right? So.
Let me see. I think Keith, your hand's up. Okay.
I have one more question. Thank you. That reminds me. So when someone does pass away and they're receiving SSI or SSDI, is that money taken out of the account at that point? How does that work exactly? If someone's receiving SSI, does the state automatically take that out or deduct that from your checking account? I don't know how that works. So.
Well, you need to notify the Social Security Administration that the person died, right? And if depending on when you reported and the person died, you might have to return some money back to Social Security. It just depends on the situation. And I think Social Security provides a small benefit, like a $200 benefit to the spouse, right? I know that when my dad died this year, my mom received from Social Security like a $200 check. It's like a death benefit check. I don't remember. It was probably a little bit over 200, but the benefits would stop.
The benefits stop. So it wasn't so much about Social Security, but more like SSI or SSDI. That might be a direct deposit into an account. And someone receives that and all of a sudden say, hey, what happened to that, that $800 check,
Well, it depends on whether at the time of death, the person was eligible for the benefit in that month. If not, you would have to return it to the Social Security. I think an important question also, which you reminded me of, is the Medi-Cal estate recovery rules. I get a lot of questions about, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about that, and it's really like, once you die, Medi-Cal is going to take everything away from you, so you shouldn't be on Medi-Cal. Well, it's not like that at all, and there are rules, and Mary will put a link to, and these publications are both in Spanish and Chinese and English, on the Medi-Cal estate recovery rules. And so if any of you are concerned about Medi-Cal recovering from your estate when you die, you really need to read that, because I think it puts a lot of fear into people, and then they don't get the Medi-Cal, and then it's good to have health insurance in California. So and this is a publication that was authored by a really great organization called the California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform. So Mary will put those links in there.
Okay, great. There was another really great question about if an individual is a conservatee and they have a child, how is that usually approached?
I have no idea how that is approached. you know, just because yeah, I don't know how, that's a really good question. I think that's a question to ask, you know, if you're going to talk to an estate planning attorney or someone who does conservatorships. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's a complex one.
I think it
And
is.
then, yeah, definitely. And something we've been talking about too, as you said, focusing more on parents in these types of situations. So yeah, definitely not a clear area, but something we will work on. And then there is another question about hearing that if you have a limited conservatorship, that there's something out there in the community that maybe the state or county could take the conservatorship from you at any time. That's what.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure what that is all about. I know that, so for example, we have some friends who have a son, an adult son with severe mental health issues, and he lives in San Diego, and the county is the public authority is the conservator of, it's not the parents, but you know, the parents didn't want to be the conservators for the adult son. So yeah, there are individuals can be conservators. There are organizations that are conservators. There's the public authority, I believe, that could be a conservator.
Okay.
There's also a question earlier that asked, where can families go for help with conservatorship application?
Well, you can, so you file a petition for conservatorship or limited conservatorship with Superior Court of California, and every county in California has at least one branch, one superior court. And Los Angeles has a number of superior courts because it's such a large county. So some courts have self-help clinics that you can attend, and I don't know if they're open right now because they were closed during COVID. So you can go to those clinics to learn about conservatorships, the process, the forms, etc. So you should contact your local superior court to see if they have a program like that. I think, and I may be wrong, but I think there's an organization in Los Angeles called BetCedic who may do some of that work. Great organization, so you might want to reach out to them. Obviously, attorneys do this kind of work too, so you could reach out to them. We have a referral list of the state elder law attorneys that we can provide to the group also, but there are a lot of attorneys who do this kind of work. I'm trying to think of, Mary, do you know of any other maybe nonprofit that does, oh, they're not doing their self-help clinics right now. Thank you for that information. Less expensive than a lawyer, yeah.
I found the list of the, so it's on the website for the for the court. Let me go back here so you can see where it clicks. So we were on here, you can print friendly directory on here, and it shows you all the self-help clinics.
Wow, Mary, that's great.
Yeah.
So you would need to call to see if they're open or not, you know.
That's correct.
It's COVID stuff, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
I'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah, legal aid, you would need to call your local legal aid to see if they do that kind of work. We do not. DRC doesn't do that. So someone wants you to show them how to get to that again.
Oh.
Yeah. And if you could share the self-help link also separate from.
Sure. So we showed you
courts.
Right.
We're going to give you that link to the California courts because there's a lot of information there that you can look up. And then Mary, go ahead.
Yes. So you just go here, I mean, here where the map is, it says California Self-Help and Family Law Facilitator locations, and click on the printer-friendly directory, and it gives you the directory of all the ones in California. And I'll put this in the chat.
Thank you, Mary. There's someone had a comment here about attorneys with trust being expensive. Yes, but if you don't have a lot of money and you want to set up a pool special needs trust, there's something in California called the pooled special needs trust. So this is where people with, you know, because it costs money to put together a special needs trust. It may be more money than what you have. So with a pool special needs trust, you can still establish a special needs trust with the small money you have. And Mary will put information, the link to pool special needs trust in California.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. This is a wealth of information. Oh, and I don't think we did fully answer about undocumented families. That came up as well.
What is the question?
Yeah, that undocumented families are hesitant to engage in courts even if conservatorship is needed. And how do the courts view these families?
Oh, goodness. Don't know.
Yeah. It's another area that I think, we need to clarify further. Lorena, you're shaking your head. Lorena is our parent navigator who works with a lot of these families. But I think this is something that, you know, this summit this is a complex area in multiple ways. And I think some of the questions are not easy to answer, and only, you know, goes to show us how much work that still has to be done, and that we can, you know, continue to delve deeper into some of these issues. And I want to just say thank you to all our participants, in addition to our panel members who've been amazing, for answering each other's questions and keeping us thinking about, you know, the additional complex issues that our community faces that we'll continue to all work on together. So thank you. I would love,
So Guadalupe Eaton said immigration status is not required at the petition of limited conservatorship.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And I think so. The other questions about the recording of the presentation, Dr. Betts let us know that we'll be putting it on the USC UCEDD website. And then I do believe that Crystal Ash, our coordinator, is going to be sending out materials that a lot of our presenters provided us that they do want the participants to have access to after the presentation. So she'll be sending those out.
Great.
And I'll turn it over to Dr. Betts.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I want to echo what has been said about our gratitude and thanks to all who participated today, because it's been so informative and useful that will enable us to be better providers and respond to the needs of those that we serve. And we intend to continue this effort in terms of providing other virtual meetings that are transition specific, related to the needs of youth and young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. There's so much to learn, to, you know, be updated on, that we will intend to respond to that need. So we're so very thankful that you attended today, And I believe in a link, we're going to, or in the chat, provide a link where you can provide us with evaluation feedback. And because that will be very useful to our efforts in the future. And I also just want to plug that tomorrow we have a transition summit that is entitled Family Day. And that we're going to be covering the same content, but obviously we're going to alter it somewhat to be responsive to the consumers and the families attending. And we're offering it in 4 languages: Spanish, ASL, Mandarin, and English. So if there are individuals who you know might want to attend, please let them know. And we will, as with this recording, upload it onto our website. And we will inform you once that recording has been edited as requested by a speaker or two, and available then for future use. So thank you so much, everyone. And let me just ask Crystal. Crystal, are you able to put the link in the chat? There we go. Great. So again, we would really appreciate you providing us feedback so we can improve upon what we're doing here. So I want to thank you all and have a great rest of the day and a great weekend. And thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.